Okay, I've been given the go-ahead, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and call to order the Wednesday, September 18th, 2019 meeting of the Reno City Planning Commission. And to start it off, I'll ask everybody to rise and ask Commissioner Marshall to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, we are doing this with a little bit of technical difficulty, so I will ask that we make sure we speak into our microphones tonight to get that recorded. And for those of you making public comment, we do have a microphone up there, but we'll ask you to speak up as well. So next, Kelly, can I have roll call, please?
Sorry about that. All the buttons over here. Kathleen Taylor. Here. Commissioner Gower.
Here.
Commissioner Griffith. Absent at this time. Commissioner Hawkins.
Here.
Commissioner Marshall.
Here.
Commissioner Olivas.
Here.
Chair Johnson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I get started tonight, we do have a couple of modifications to our agenda. I'd like to turn it over to Angela Foos.
Thank you. For the record, Angela Foos, Planning Manager. I would like to make an announcement tonight that public hearing case number LDC 18-00087, this is the Meridian 120 South, Villages 3 and 4 agenda item, has been pulled from tonight's agenda. And that was due to an error in public noticing. We will be rescheduling this agenda item for October 3rd. We will be sending out new notices, so everything will be noticed again. But we just want to acknowledge that it will not be heard tonight and has been rescheduled for October 3rd.
Okay. Thank you very much. So for those of you that are here for that item, a couple of things. We're going to have public comment in a minute. You're welcome to speak during that. I will also, once our public hearings start, I will mention again where we're at with that project and allow for public comment at that time as well. So we have a few agenda items between now and then. So with that, I am going to open up public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. Callie, do we have any specific request to speak forms on this item? I see the pile of salmon documents making its way down here. Okay, so and again, for this item or anything else, please see Callie to fill one of these out. With that, I'll call your name. You'll have 3 minutes, and I ask that you state your name for the record when you start. Starting with Erica White.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening. My name is Erica White. I live in Verdi. I am a retired developer, commercial, residential, agricultural, and in California, and I am now retired. I have to object and oppose Meridian 120 South, 1 through 6 inclusively. There was a hearing about 1 and 2, and now we're talking about 3 and 4. There was a discussion some time ago from Commissioner McKenzie that it was to be remanded and it was to come back 1 through 6 in its entirety, not piecemealing. And so I'm very concerned about the way in which this project is being handled. The infrastructure should be handled first and not last. We have to have the horse before the cart, not the cart before the horse. And so with that, I would like to also mention that the Mortons and Garson handbook is still in effect for those that just need a reminder. So with this, I thank you so much for being here to listen to us tonight, because this is a huge concern that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Next request to speak form is from Ken McNeil.
Good evening, Ken McNeil. I'm just going to kind of give a general comment about the proposed fire station for the Mortensen-Garson area. I've been reading things, hearing things. It sounds like there's going to be a charge per lot, door, whatever you want to call it. But my question is, it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. And I'd like to see a public document of some sort for the taxpayers of our community to ensure that there's a way to pay for that fire station, and also to know if the Reno Fire Department is going to have to come up with some of the money or all the money for the staffing of that fire station. As you know, the Reno Fire Department is struggling. They had to borrow $6,500,000 for new equipment. They don't have the money to staff that fire station. If they have to come up with the money, something's got to give. And I think that's part of your process, is to make sure that existing service is not impacted. Well, it will be impacted if money has been taken from another area to fund the personnel. So I would like to see a more definitive public document as to how this fire station is going to be built, funded, staffed, and if there's going to be any use of funds that are not coming from either the developer or the new homeowners. And I would really like to stress that that's very important. I just think that we're talking about public safety, we're talking about people's lives. It's important. We're not talking about trees and sidewalks, those are important too. But this is public safety. Right now, if that fire station is not built, somebody has a heart attack, you might as well call the funeral home, not the fire department. So it's pretty evident that that fire station needs to be built. And how it should be funded and how it's going to be funded there should be a public record we should all know. We have taxpayers here, and that's important information to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Patty Argyris.
Is this working?
Yes.
Addie Argyris, for the record, with so many MG applications being submitted at one time, I want to give you a little update or a little general information on Mortensen-Garson. Mortensen-Garson was deemed, and still is, a project of regional significance. MG is a max density of 3,000 dwelling units, including non-residential equivalents. MG is not a minimum, nor appropriate, nor guaranteed density. These are to be determined here during the review process. The density allocated to each of the property owners is as shown in that table. If an application is not consistent with the handbook, then it is subject to the cooperative planning with a review by TMRP. So in a sense, the handbook is still in play. This is per para 4 of the settlement agreement. When MGOD was presented to the Verdi CAB and the Verdi community, it was done so without any supporting documentation given to us from the city. This was done in March of 2009. We were told by the city planners to trust them that MGOD was a handbook. And I have some time. I want to just address water. So Tumwa has finished the purchase of the water system, but the inner tie is not in, and the inner tie will not be in until mid-21 if all goes smoothly. They're still trying to work on the railroad easement, but until that inner tie is in, supplying surface water, these applications will not be in compliance with code. And that surface water was put in by the city as a guarantee that the Tumwa water line would be in at final map. It was not put in by Mark Rotter, the author of the plan, so his opinion is moot. The city or the state engineer has limited the use of groundwater to 100 acre-feet annually, and that applies to Tumwa also. And I talked to the state engineer in July, and they are holding on that 100 acre-feet. And per Tumwa records, usage is at 59 acre-feet at the end of June. So these applications are not in compliance with code. The Tumwa line isn't in and won't be in for some time. This is a form over substance. Tumwa owns the water system, but the substance of it is it's still supplying groundwater only. This is the same situation. It still exists as October 2017 when you denied Meridian South 1 and 2. Nothing's changed except Tumwa now owns water company. Thank you. Oh, with 21 minutes, can I continue? Seconds, can I continue? I just want to also go on record. I submitted 2 emails with a lot of attachment that I would hope you would read. It has a lot of information on the water. Thank you.
Next is Tim Fada.
Good evening, Tim Fada for the record, 55-year resident. We heard a nice presentation from the last lady on their project and things that aren't being followed. My question to you is liability and responsibility. Who has it? You're the county planning, or the city planning commission. I know you kind of get some direction from the master plan, but if things are not learned from history and wetlands are being built in, projects are being built without infrastructure in place, who's responsible? Can we come back to you and sue you? Can we come back to the developer and sue you? If something doesn't go the way that the developer wants it, who has the liability? I mean, me, myself, if I'm somebody going to go and build something, I would hope it gets built or I could get the plan through. Yes, I believe that your job is a challenging job. But here we are, we've got a couple of projects, and I'll go and I'll talk about the Daybreak project that's going on right now. You approved their project, the city denied their project. Now, there's a process that should have been handled. They come back in a year. They didn't come back in a year. They come back and they sued the city. Do they sue you? Who's the responsible person that made the error? Is staff giving you the wrong information? Are you getting the wrong information from other people? Are the developers trying to go and steamroll somebody into doing something? These projects need to have some other look at. We need to look at these developments that are trying to be built in wetlands and built on. No developer nor yourselves can promise us we will not have another storm event that will flood South Meadows or again flood Lemon Valley in that area. I hope that we have some means at hand that we can come together and do a better job of our jobs. I don't know if you're all are engineers or not. I don't know that. But I would hope that the information provided to you to make your decisions on these projects and that is complete, is documented and proved that it's not going to impact the neighbor's property because somebody's going to come build a warehouse in a floodplain, etc. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Lori Beach.
Good evening, Lori Beach for the record. Obviously, since I've been coming here, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, nor do I profess to be. But all I come here to you is, it's getting frustrating, and I've said that before. A developer comes, we as residents are there. I realize the developers are trying to employ people, make money themselves. I'm not saying anything, but right now we have residents. We got a resident right here that's out of her home. We've got a resident that will never go back to her home, but yet we are still building and we are still improving. It's frustrating as a citizen to see how things work. You got your nab and your cab. I'm not going to take anything away from them, but we know they don't hold a lot of power. Then we come to you, and we would think that the councils, be it city or county, depending upon where we're at, would take what you say, because you're supposed to be their eyes, and you're supposed to give them your judgment. A development will come to you, it'll be approved or disapproved. If it's disapproved, it'll go to the city. The city will disapprove or disapprove. They'll choose to sue. The city will come back to avoid the lawsuit and approve. Meanwhile, more residents are flooding. It's already snowing in the Sierras. It's September. What's it going to look like again for February? I did the open records request for the will of serves for the plant. This one was May 20th. That's what's left. And then now we were assured by the city council that the shave would no longer be used in that determination. This is the will serve letter dated in July. If you look, they're now calculating in the flow shave. Where do we stand? Is it going to count? Is it not? At what point are we going to stop? We are running out. There is nowhere to send this other than into our homes, into our community. Do you spend your time away from your family making these decisions to turn around and have the city say, we don't care what you thought? We don't care the time you put in? Because I'm sure more than just sitting here showing up for your monthly meeting, I'm sure you've done a whole lot of reading your packets and your research on your time. I would assume, I would hope. You come to a decision and they don't care about that decision. There's many of us that are choosing to leave. Is that what they want? That we're just going to leave those of us that have the ability to leave? I've already made it clear, I've already bought land in New Mexico. So I don't have to stay here when I retire. I will be more than happy to take my PERS retirement and go give it to Bernalillo County in New Mexico or Sandoval County. I will not support Washoe County with my retirement funding and my fund. I just went to Yerington to buy a trailer because that's where the prices were better. That means I didn't support my own county. I'm already at the point where I'm not supporting my county. My thing is, you are making decisions, and even your decisions are not being looked at. That's got to be disheartening to you. I sit here on my time and pull these records, and I can see what they're doing. I can see they're not even paying attention to their own stuff. So I've said my piece, and I wish you all well. Thank you.
Next is Joseph Callahan.
Yes, my name is Joseph Callahan, and I'm a resident of Sierra Canyon, Somerset, Webb. And anyway, first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak tonight. But I just want to say, I'll try to make this brief because I echo probably everything that a lot of other people have said already. But the sewer infrastructure is not going to be able to handle this, and I want to just bring to people's attention, because this keeps getting glossed over, that the lower villages of Sierra Canyon, the newer homes that have been built closer to the interstate, are already having sewage problems, sewage infrastructure problems, and that is not going to be to add another, I don't know how many other hundreds of homes they're planning to add, but the sewer infrastructure is just not there to handle it, and that's all I really want to say. Thank you.
Kelly, do you have any additional requests to speak forms under this item?
Not under this item, there are for others.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment under general public comment? Yeah. State your name and then fill out a form with Kelly afterwards.
I thought I had. I was just speaking about the Meridian 120.
This is general.
Okay, but I did want to ask, given that I think some of my neighbors are here also to speak to that, if if you don't make us have to wait through all the other items
I
of
gave
business.
the
We
op-
greatly
I
appreciate
gave the
it.
option at the beginning to either speak now or
Okay,
wait
then
and
I'll speak now. Then I'll speak now. Okay, so thank you very much. I really want to thank Commissioner Gideon Kaplowitz.
Thank you.
I'm speaking with regards to LDC 1800, whatever it is, Meridian 120 South Villages 3 and 4. I really want to thank Commissioner Olivis, Marshall, and particularly Hawkins, who were very involved in Meridian 120 South Villages 1 and 2, which came out of this commission and is denied, and so eloquently put, and I can remember it today, over a year later, by Commissioner Hawkins for inadequately addressing water. And in reviewing the work, the staff report for Villages 3 and 4, it looks like things have gotten even worse. And we're not even talking about Villages 1 and 2. And so for the rest of you who aren't as familiar with this, there's all this stuff. Addie has sent you tons and tons of material about this. But I just saw this letter from Tumwa saying, yeah, we're going to put this interceptor in sometime in the next several years. And even if we succeed in doing that, we can't provide, we don't have the water for you. I mean, it's right there in the letter. They're 6 gallons a minute short. And that's not even taking into consideration Villages 1 and 2 or 5 and 6. The short story is they appealed. The city council remanded it back here for very good grounds, which is saying, look, we can't make any of these findings because we can't assess any of the impacts of this project. This is Villages 1 and 2, because we got 3 and 4, we have 5 and 6, we have the full build out of 120 North, we've got the San Lucas coming in, we've got these Verdi apartments coming in. The traffic numbers don't make sense, the school numbers don't make sense, and the water is so far from being straight, it's insane. Now, what did I wish they were here. What did they do? They sued. And they're suing. And pending litigation about Villages 1 and 2, they've repackaged it. It's going to be, we just had a CAD meeting about this, or an ad meeting about Villages 1 and 2. They're going to put it back here. They're here for 3 and 4. And it's actually kind of insulting to me. You know, I've got 2 kids at home. I've had to come out here for the umpteenth time with respect to this. It's insulting to you guys because it's going to ask you to make a judgment about something where you can't have the full information. And it's just sour. It's really sour. And I hope that on October 3rd when we come, we get a postponement again saying that you guys have made a unanimous statement saying, sorry, we can't make any findings until you come back here with the whole package. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So, Cal, if we could just make sure that that's under the general public comment.
I pulled that one out.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comment under general public comment? Okay, I will close public comment and bring it back to item 4, approval of the minutes from the Reno City Planning Commission on August 21st.
Commissioner Hawkins, move to approve.
Commissioner Taylor, second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next on the agenda, item 5, City Council liaison reports.
There are none at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 6.1, the zoning code update status on the renovation code update. Arlo, I guess this is you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Arlo Stockham, Community Development Director. Today I have a relatively brief status update on the code update process. I don't have a big PowerPoint presentation or anything. It's a little different than our issue sheets. We're transitioning to a new phase of the project. The issue sheets have been completed through the Planning Commission. The last of the issue sheets dealing with procedures and administration, that was on Council's agenda last week, but the meeting went way long, so they continued it, so they haven't heard that one yet, so I don't have a status report back to you on actions on that process issue sheet. As you heard at our last meeting when the consultants were here, we have the first module of the draft code up and online, and we're getting copious questions and input regarding that. We sent out a citywide mailed notification to every property owner in the city, inviting them into the code update process and encouraging them to comment early and often so we can take those into consideration, and a lot of people are taking us up on that. We had a couple workshops 2 weeks ago, mainly to introduce the format of the plan, and we have 2 more public workshops scheduled on, that will be Tuesday, September 24th, 6 p.m. at McKinley, as well as Monday, September 30th, 6 p.m. at the Neal Road Rec Center. So no one's watching on TV because our AV's down. So just wanted to encourage everyone to participate. We plan to bring forward probably every other month coming for the foreseeable future, kind of discussion items on big issues we're hearing about and to get some preliminary input. But the comment period is going to be open through the new year. We're deep at work behind the scenes, working up the administrative draft of the second module of code, which is really the bulk of it, all the development standards. That's going to be available for public review in roughly 4 weeks. And again, we're getting a lot of good input, and we're kind of moving into this next phase of the project where people will be able to review draft ordinances. Those ordinances are aligned with the general direction we got in the issue sheet process that we've done over the last 6 months. So there shouldn't be major surprises in terms of new topics being addressed or not being addressed. But there is obviously a lot more detail. And in particular, we're spending a lot of time on the site and building design standards, the residential adjacency standards, and some of those real key sections of code coming out in this next code module. So I think that basically covers my update. Happy to answer any questions, or if you have input for me at this time. We have a very organized and lengthy spreadsheet to track input we're getting, so we have kind of the full range of input, and we can evaluate that and bring that forward for discussion in terms of what to consider modifying in the next draft of code. But really the modifications are going to come, it's going to be busy in the January to April timeframe of next year. That's where we're going to have to consider all the comments and decide what modifications to make and prepare that second consolidated draft to move forward. I think that's everything I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, any questions on the update? So you got off easy tonight, Arlo. So far.
I'll go back to my computer.
Don't go too far.
After one agenda item.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the same zoning code update, planning commission discussion of potential sustainability initiatives. I believe this was requested by Commissioner Gower, and I'm going to turn this bit of presentation over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the commission wouldn't mind, and if you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman, I've put together just a couple slides that I'd like to walk through. Callie, I think that's about 3 slides in. There we go. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you. So I just wanted to put these together to kind of help us with some discussion points and to help with the dialogue or conversation with staff and among ourselves on this topic. I know as we go through this zoning code update, similar to the process that we went through with the master plan, this theme of sustainability has come up a lot, and it shows up a lot in our master plan. So just kind of a context piece or background. We have the master plan with that theme embedded in it. Our role is to support not only the adoption of the master plan, but to use the master plan in our decision-making process and advise the city council on those decisions. In terms of sustainability and just that topic, council's made a number of decisions or given certain direction in addition to the master plan. They adopted the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan recently, which is essentially a roadmap for implementing some of the strategies that are included in the master plan related to sustainability and climate change. A few years ago, they bought on to or adopted a resolution for the climate covenant of mayors for climate and energy, essentially, saying that as a city, we agree to advance the Paris Climate Accord, those principles for greenhouse gas reduction. And as you know, we've been getting comments related to the Ozone Advance Program from Washoe County Air Quality Management Division, and that is in response to the council's adoption of this resolution to be a partner of that program. So we kind of have this framework and context for thinking about sustainability as part of this code update. If you could jump to the next slide. So just getting a little bit deeper into what the master plan says, it basically identifies us, the Planning Commission, as a partner in this process of incorporating these concepts that are embedded in the master plan into this Title 18 process. So I want to make sure that as a commission that we are responding to that directive that's in the master plan, number one. There are other components in the master plan that don't specifically identify the Planning Commission, but things that we might want to consider as a commission, again, to help support the City Council and advise the Council on these types of issues and decisions. And something that popped out to me when I was looking through our implementation strategies in the master plan were related to monitoring. And that's also called out in the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, essentially monitoring our progress towards meeting these goals. So can we support the City Manager's Office, City Council, and Community Development in advancing that particular strategy? And again, just getting a little bit more specific with some of the themes that we might want to consider getting additional feedback from staff on if they are already incorporated into this update process. Are there things that we might want to take a little bit closer look at to build in not only for this round or put them in the parking lot or whatever we want to call it for the next round, but really the one that, and there's three of these, the one that kind of rises to the top is priority number one for the Planning Commission is this idea of form and pattern, which is concentrating that growth, the future development in existing developed areas. And that has all the advantages of those bullets that are on the screen. It supports walkability and transit. It reduces particulate emissions and GHG emissions, the ozone advance component of this equation. Diversity of housing. If we have that diversity of housing and that supply, then it'll address the demand situation that we have for housing, that'll address hopefully the affordability challenge that we're looking at. Decreases the need for greenfield development. And essentially at the end of the day, it's a more fiscally responsible choice. So looking at form and pattern, are we doing everything we can as part of this Title 18 update process to address that master plan sustainability goal and one that has such important ramifications for us as a city?
Yeah.
Some other components, as Arlo mentioned, building and site design standards. I mean, those are kind of the bread and butter of this this code update process. In addition to the form and pattern, are there things that maybe we're missing as part of this update, as part of this opportunity? Obviously, one that we've talked about is this EV charging infrastructure piece. We've looked at it on certain projects, tentative maps in particular. It's a principle in the master plan, number 28, Sustainability Design Principle 28. So it's in there. We've gotten feedback from staff that maybe incorporating it as part of individual projects is not the way to go. Maybe look at it more comprehensively as part of the update process. So if there's a way to do that while also addressing things like housing affordability, maybe we need to take another look at it. And then there's a resiliency component that's also in the master plan that's maybe a little bit outside of the Title 18 update on its face, but really conceptually is what it means. What it means is looking at our development with a long-term mindset. It's the durability of our infrastructure and our development, and really the durability of our decisions, and addressing things like changing hazards, development standards in wildland-urban interface or WUI areas, for example. And then looking a little bit more closely and potentially incorporating more consistent, potentially, or data-driven standards, for example, for development in floodplain areas or in areas that might see development potentially contributing to flooding impacts. So yeah, just kind of wanted to tee those up as potentially 3 areas where the Planning Commission might want to take a look at. Similar bullet points there. And the first one related to that implementation item from the master plan, the resiliency plan component, and then something that is advocated for in the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan is this idea of monitoring and looking at basically the impacts of our decisions and the kind of the outcomes of the planning process. 5 years down the road, looking back, have we approved the number of units or the type of mixed-use development that we thought we were going to in core areas, or over the past 5 years did we just approve 90% of our growth in kind of these urban fringe areas? So just taking that kind of retrospective look at our decision making and using that as a tool to drive future decision making. So there's one more slide here, and it's essentially saying that, Kyle, if you wouldn't mind jumping to the next one, that we were, dealt a deck of cards when each one of us joined the commission. There's a development pattern in place. There were thousands of decisions that preceded us, but we have a really unique opportunity right now with the code update box open and being able to, contribute to that decision and provide that advice to City Council. We've got this directive in the master plan. We've got the roadmap provided in the Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, and we've got what I see is the support of City Council and the resolutions that they've adopted and the support that they've given to the topic. So kind of with that context, I'd be interested in the Commission's feedback on if there are certain initiatives that we want to pursue. Is it one out of many? Is it none? Another thing I'd like to get the Commission's feedback on is what, if anything, do we want staff to come back with at a future agenda item? Potentially, for example, we're already doing all of this as part of the code update, and we just need to tie those pieces together to tell you how we're doing that. So just some food for thought. Thanks for listening to that presentation. I look forward to the conversation. And I also want to point out that we have, in addition to Arlo, Lynn Barker from the city who spearheaded the Sustainability and Climate Action Plans in the audience too. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. I think definitely some good points of discussion there. I guess commissioners kind of gave some reaction. I know this was something that we wanted to talk about. We've had presentations on the Sustainability Action Plan. We've had some direction on that, and we've also seen a number of things from the code update. I think what we're looking at here is trying to identify and maybe provide additional direction on specific elements to include, as well as direction or not, our, recommendations to staff moving forward on this. So I appreciate the presentation of Commissioner Gower. I want to see what any feedback we might have or questions from staff in terms of moving forward with something like this. Commissioner Marshall.
I think it's great, and thank you, Commissioner Gower, for putting this together. The way that it becomes real for me is we are often asked to make a yes or no decision on applications that come before us. Vote yes, vote no. And it's oftentimes, I think, other questions that are more, that add to that equation than just, an up or down vote. And one of the things that I think for me that this does is it really emphasizes our will is we have a choice as to what kind of development and where it should go and what should inform that decision. And to me, this really talks about like a sustainability score or a particular project in a particular location. Where do we want to use our, in some instances, relatively limited capacity for development? What kind of projects do we want to promote? And to me, there's, along with this, there's other things like employment, what kind of jobs are being created? Is it a more than just, does it meet an allowed use within the code? Or, within the either master plan or within chapter 18? But is this a good project now? Given where, should we be allocating some of our limited resources to this kind of project? What kind of results will it have? And so that's, Commissioner Gower, when I look at this, that's how I would view the application of a lot of these factors. And is it promoting not just consistency with our dry code, but is it promoting the greater objectives that we see and that the City Council has adopted on a number of occasions as it being important to decide what types of projects should move forward. And I also think it's a temporal notion of when should a project like that kind of move forward. So I think thank you very much for bringing this up, and that's how I would kind of internalize it. And I don't know if it's something that staff reports can contain a kind of assessment of, is this a good project under sustainability? And help us inform that kind of decision making, because I think more and more we're going to be placed in a position of, in a world of limited resources, where do we allocate sewer capacity? Where do we allocate, to some degree, we're kind of up against ozone capacity. Where do we allocate, that limited amount of development potential, and what kind of projects promote the overarching goals of the regional, master plan that we would want to apply in this situation? So, my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Additional comments? I guess I'm going to weigh in, so somebody else is jumping up. I did not see anything in there that I don't agree with. Everything that was there, and I guess my question is, as a recommendation to staff, and maybe this is some point for Arlo or Angela to weigh in, and maybe Callie, can you back up one slide here, please? I think this to me, when I look at it, is kind of a little bit more of maybe some of the bread and butter that was being talked about. But these are things that I would agree should be being considered as part of the code update that we're doing, whether it's mandating it, incorporating it, or, as Commissioner Gower stated, maybe coming back to us with what is or is not being done. I mean, we've had some comments. I think the EV one's a great discussion. Much easier to look at on a broad-based thing, whether it's number of units, type of units, type of zoning that would require it. I think the issue of tree canopy versus landscape area is critical. I hear that a lot with the Reno, and it's less less important that we're landscaping a lot of area. And in fact, in some of these projects, I think we should be landscaping less area, but providing more cover, because we're running into issues, as we talked about, with water or with storm drain runoff. The more landscape we're providing, the more water we're having to bring in. So I would support this as an approach. I would support these items and others from the sustainability plan being brought forward and specifically identified as part of the code update in terms of how we're addressing them. I think these are things that can be flagged, especially some of the very specific sustainability principles, as you talked about, that are in there. So I would encourage this. I would be curious, maybe Arlo, if you can answer the question as to how much, if anything, you saw here that has not come up as part of the discussions with Clarion and the code update assessment.
Thank you. Truthfully, I think it's all been discussed, and much of it's in the draft code. This is a little unusual point in the process. I think the next opportunity for the Planning Commission to provide input into the code update is when we're reviewing the next drafts and making recommendations for how to revise those. The process we've been through in the last 6 months effectively has been to discuss these items and set the scope of work, and you've all provided recommendations to the City Council, and they've upheld many of those, and they've had some disagreement with a couple of those. One thing that I think is incredibly important to keep in mind is you cannot think about sustainability in isolation. There are many other components of the master plan, and everything's interrelated. I would say that sustainability and affordability are really two of the top objectives of the code update. And the code update isn't everything that ever will be. It's important not to try to load 50 different changes onto one project where everything collapses, because some things can get controversial, some things are easier, but it's an ongoing process. And it's one Lynn is leading up where there's going to be ongoing discussions and additional changes coming forward, various initiatives, some of them related to code, some of them not related to code. I guess specifically, the code update has a lot of focus on sustainability in the design principles and in the various regulations. The major changes to the site and building design standards focus on enhancing sustainability, improving walkability and bikeability, and diversifying land uses in conjunction with trying to address some of our affordability challenges. So I'd suggest that the most effective proposals moving forward would be those that address many goals, not just one goal at the expense of a different goal. So maybe just to go down this bullet list, which also doesn't include many of the additional things in the draft code. The building energy targets are really something that is more of a plan level thing and a monitoring and a program level thing than a code of ordinance regulatory thing. Maybe I'm missing it, but we don't have building energy targets built into the code update at this time. If you have some ideas to recommend in the next round, great. EV infrastructure, that was something you all recommended just kind of as a matter of course. Every home should be required to have EV charging infrastructure. That was discussed at council, and there were some concerns with that proposal and its impact on housing affordability. And what's the benefit compared to the costs? Many of the people here in our office who drive electric vehicles are perfectly happy with their 110 charging. It works just fine. You plug it in, it's charged overnight. 220 charges faster. There's some pros to that. There's some cons to that. But that recommendation wasn't upheld because it was, from what I understand of the action, it was far-reaching and it applied to every price point in every location, and perhaps you might want to recommend a more refined approach to that topic. So that one, there are no regulations in the pending draft code coming out requiring that new homes have EV charging facilities within them. There are new energy codes and a lot more in terms of energy efficiency. So that's one that I think probably triggered some of this discussion here, that didn't get in there. There's going to be several more rounds of revisions and make another round of recommendations there. Todd supportive zoning is fully integrated in, and truthfully has been integrated into the city's plans and codes for some time, but the code update expands upon that. Our fire chief is administering the WUI ordinances today, and has been for a period of time now. So that's all being implemented. We are writing in some cross-references, so it's clear to everyone that those codes do apply, and they have applied to recent projects. If the Planning Commission recommends kind of going beyond that from outside the fire codes and what the fire departments are doing, I'm certainly open to that, but I'm also sensitive to not duplicating efforts and making sure we have the proper experts in the room if we're going to do something additional. Connectivity guidelines in all areas is a big focus in the changed development standards that you're going to be seeing coming forward, as is diversification of uses, as is a new employee trip reduction program regulation, and just a lot of focus in the revised site and building design standards for designs that promote multimodal forms of transportation and a more compact development pattern in appropriate areas. Recognizing that that needs to be balanced with kind of neighborhood interests and quality of life interests. I think a lot of people here in the audience have chosen to live out in the Verde area, which is the exact opposite of infill, for many of the quality of life benefits it has. So a lot of the input we get is pushback against intensification. So we need to balance those issues and try to move in a sustainable direction, but in a way that the community broadly supports. We're kind of getting feedback roughly 50-50 in terms of intensification. But the code also has a lot of win-wins in there that aren't mentioned here. Substantially reduced parking requirement. That's something that helps with affordability. It helps with sustainability. We don't need massive fields of unused parking lots out in the community. It's a prime redevelopment opportunity that really has a lot of benefit and minimal cost. That's built in. A lot of the landscape changes being discussed are built in, although probably not as far-reaching as I think what I just heard of kind of moving away from some of the minimum landscaped areas. It has some elements of that in the mixed-use areas, but the draft code still does retain the 20% landscape area requirement that's been in place for some time. As well, there's an ongoing effort for a new tree protection ordinance that gets at the tree canopy, which also needs to be balanced with energy production, rooftop solar. I mean, ultimately, rooftop solar doesn't work if it's in the shade. So a good strategic plan to, where's the energy production, where's the shade, it may or may not be on rooftops. I put them on my rooftop. There's pros and cons. The snow cracked one of them. I have a lot more maintenance, but those things happen. So a lot of this is in there. There are flood ordinance modifications. They're targeted and limited, but they do require additional mitigation above impacts in our closed basin areas. There's also a whole suite of additional projects to be considered. That should be ranked and prioritized through our annual priority setting process, which is going to come upon us pretty quickly here, where Planning Commission will be able to provide recommendations as to what new initiatives we should embark on, and those will go through council as well, and ultimately we'll get direction on what are those coming priorities. Also wanted to emphasize our neighborhood outreach process that's planned following the code adoption. It's very sensitive when you talk about intensifying land uses, greater diversity of housing types. It all sounds great till the apartment buildings proposed next to your backyard. So this process intends to go out neighborhood by neighborhood and engage the people and try to find win-win opportunities for new land uses, for improved multimodal facilities, capital improvement priorities. In my experience, when you try to do that citywide,
we're back to what your update was. So I'd like to just stop you right there. I want to bring this back to the issue that we were talking about here, and I want to go back to Commissioner Geller. I asked the questions in terms of how this was being incorporated up to this point. We've got some feedback from some commissioners in terms of the approval of this, and this. But I guess in keeping with you, and I know you've been looking at this pretty in detail through this code update process, and based on what you've heard tonight, is there some additional comment or part that you'd like to bring into this discussion?
I guess 2 points that I want to make based on the feedback from the commission and from Arlo. Number one is that I would hope, based on all of the things that the city is already doing and is planning on doing relative to implementing the strategies that are in the master plan, that if we do take that look back 5-10 years from now, that we'll see that we didn't just perpetuate business as usual, that it wasn't just putting a new name on something that we've been doing the same for 20 years. My fear is that if we don't tie those, if we don't connect those dots, Arlo, that it's just lip service, essentially. So I feel strongly that we're moving in the right direction. I guess I'm just looking for the connections that you're talking about so that we can make them, so that council can make them, and so that at the end of the day, we can communicate back to not necessarily our constituents, but indirectly our constituents, the council's constituents who provided the input into the master plan, that this was one of the main things that they were concerned about. That as a city, we took their feedback to heart, and my gosh, we're doing something about it because that's what we said we were going to do. So that's number one. And number two is that in these plans, I agree with what Commissioner Marshall, you said, in having an evaluation tool for understanding kind of the sustainability components and the trade-offs that you're talking about. Obviously, it is an integrated. Each decision is integrated. It's not just sustainability in a vacuum. There's affordability. There's social impacts. There's all these different things that go in it. But if we do it project by project, we're going to run into a situation like we have been, where if we're throwing these things at the developers or the applicants and saying, well, it's in the master plan, we want you to do this on this project, without having more of a context for it, or a code or a policy or something as a city that supports it, then we're just going to continue blindsiding the development community. We've got to be up front, like we've done in the master plan, and that's why I get fired up when we try to do things like accessory dwelling units, for example, that we didn't have in the master plan, that all of a sudden we're going to pursue this ordinance and it takes everyone off guard because it's not what we said we were going to do. We said in the master plan that we're going to do this, implement sustainability design guidelines. Arlo's telling us that we're doing that as part of the code update. I would like to make sure that the applicants who come in the door know what they're expecting, or what to expect when they submit an application as part of the process. And at the end of the day, I want that information feedback loop to be connected to the public. And if it's just perpetuating business as usual, then we haven't done our job and we've really missed an opportunity. So I don't necessarily agree with Arlo that we're doing the best we can. I think best practices for a lot of other cities and communities, the bar is set a lot higher than where we're setting it. There could be potential trade-offs, but there could be huge economic opportunities too for us as a city if we choose to go in this direction. So I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I really would encourage the Commission to pursue some of these initiatives just a little bit further and try to push the envelope a little bit, because I feel like this is our opportunity to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gowan. Excuse me. Additional comments based on that? So, although I think what I'm hearing is when we come back the next time with the presentation, we're going to be asking a lot of questions about this. So, I'm going to look for assurance from you that you yourself and staff will be prepared to address the concerns that we're raising tonight, and we'll probably continue this throughout the process.
Yes, of course. And we encourage you to look closely at what's being drafted, and there's going to be a whole other round of revisions. So Hope you like what we see, and I'm sure there'll be refinements that need to be made. We'll keep on working through the process.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, now I'm going to move on to public hearings. For those of you that weren't here at the beginning of the evening, and those of you that were, we're going to reiterate that item number 7.3, case number LDC 18-00087, Meridian 120, has been pulled due to a noticing error. So it will not be heard tonight. However, since it is on the agenda and this poll happened this afternoon, we do not have a presentation from the applicant. We are not going to open this for any kind of hearing by the commission, but I am going to, before I move on to item 7.1 and 7.2, I'm going to move 7.3 up and have public comment on that item. So I do have several requests to speak forms on that. For those of you that came here for that, I'm going to allow you again, like we did the first time, the 3 minutes. Please state your name at the beginning. And again, Angela, correct me if I'm wrong, October 3rd, this has been re-agendized.
That's correct.
Okay. So with that in mind, I will open public comment and start with Leanne Radcliffe.
Hello, this is Deanne Radcliffe. That's my full name. My address is 2385 Warrior Lane in Reno, although I do live in Verdi. Thank you very much for serving on the Planning Commission and for hearing my comments. I am a long-term Verdi resident, over 40 years, and I was actually born in Reno, and I'm quite proud of that. So I'm here to speak on the Meridian 3 and 4. I was very interested to see the presentation earlier because I love the quote from the master plan on page 200 about the community's desire for the city to play a more proactive role in promoting a fiscally responsible and sustainable pattern of development. And I have to say, I sincerely feel that Reno's outreach into the Verdi area and of course the California border is definitely stretching the city's resources. And that's definitely been stated. Some issues I have about 3 and 4 in particular are the Garson overpass. Apparently all of the Meridian 1 through 5 south traffic studies, those will generate 12,799 average daily trips. That overpass, I look forward to seeing you again and showing you some great photos of bicyclists and other things on the overpass that I think are safety issues. That overpass is in need of improvements. It was built in 1963. Which was obviously quite a while ago in the on and off ramp. So again, significant traffic and concerns that I have. I feel that wildlife has not been addressed. Water, the city code requires surface water and that TUMLA be in with a final map. And again, as someone who's out there on a well, because that's the option for water, I really feel that any approval prior to TUMLA having their line in to serve those properties is risking the wells of all of us in the area. And lastly, in June of 2018, when I was there for the city council meeting for the Meridian 1 and 2, the city requested that Meridian 1 through 6 be brought in together. So I very much object to the piecemeal thing because I think you're not able to see the full impacts. And again, we need to make sure that the infrastructure is in place, and in my opinion, it's not. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Addie Argyris.
Addie Argyris for the record. I did just a really rough print of Garson Overpass, I-80, and this is where all the Meridian properties and the existing residents come together. You have one road in, one road out, and in time of emergency, you're going to have everybody getting here and trying to get on the freeway, going over Garson Overpass. June 2018, McKinsey and other council members expressed concerns about a blockage on that overpass. If there's an accident, the increase in traffic is going to delay the EMS for all the residents. It's just a bad deal until the on-ramps and that overpass are improved, which, when the properties were annexed, it was supposed to be no development on the south side until the Garson overpass was going to be put in. Right now it's 2027 to 2040 before they're going to do that. And I forget it. But anyway, here's the picture of the whole Meridian project. And all of that, all of those people are going to go there. And their traffic study doesn't even recommend a roundabout there. A couple stop signs and they're good. Here is subsequent problems that have been addressed or not addressed. They still have not been addressed. And again, this is all on that email I gave you. The one here that's going to cause you some problems, if you think you had problems with surface water, you're going to have problems with this one. Boomtown's allocated 753 dwelling units. Right now, they're over 292 with the Meridian projects as they're proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Brian White.
Good evening. My name is Brian White. I live at 350 Hirsch Road, Verdi. I am definitely opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the Meridian project. Multitude of reasons. A lot of them are already been said. I won't waste your time in repeating them. But every time I've been coming to these meetings in the last year, when it comes down to infrastructure, schools, police, fire, everybody, especially the contractors, says, well, that's not our problem. Yes, it is. It's got to be. You know, the city, the planners. I'm sorry, not the planners. The city, the fire, the police, the schools, and they all need to sit down and go, what do we need to make this work? I don't see that happening. So we're just going to build a bunch of houses, and we're not going to bring in the infrastructure. And then when bad things happen, someone's going to come put a lawsuit on the city again. You know, tonight before I was on my way here, Mayor Sheedy was on TV. She's going to do 1,000 houses in 120 days. Where's that going to happen? How's that going to happen? And I keep hearing everybody talk affordable housing. These houses that they plan on building in Meridian, I don't see them being affordable. The ones they're building off of Old 40, they're definitely not. I believe the developer there referred to it as Irvine Ranch in California. Everything there was $1 million plus. I don't understand it. I keep hearing this affordable housing, and I don't know who's going to be able to afford any of this, let alone the schools. I mean, every house, average house nowadays, 1 to 2 kids, you know, I mean, I forget what the numbers were, but we're already overbooked on the schools. We have a teacher shortage. The emergency crews, they can't make it out to us. We have a hard enough time as it is. I just feel they need to step back and reevaluate all this. You guys have spoke your mind before, and as somebody else had mentioned at the council meeting, you know, they come back when we have all 6 of them together, and I don't see it happening. I mean, is the city council talking outside of their mouth, making you guys come here, do this, look bad, whatever. But I think, you know, they need to step back and reevaluate all this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Next, Ed Coffer.
Thank you, Ed Coffer, for the record. I represent the Society for the Preservation of Verdi, and I applaud all of you, particularly Peter, for his work in developing a master plan that provides stability and sustainability for our communities. I don't know if you all are really familiar with Verdi, It's a rural community. It has no streets, no sidewalks, no curbs, no street lights. We don't have natural gas in the street. We don't have running water in the street. We don't have sewer in the street. We're dependent upon the services for each individual lot. We're dependent upon the water, the aquifer, for our sustainability. Verdi, as you probably know, is a relatively small town. And we're talking about, when we look at Meridian 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, that is almost doubling the population that exists today. And when you have small country lanes and folks with horses and trailers, and you don't have a fire department, the developer is very willing to provide a fire department at his expense. The problem is the city, by their own admission, does not have the funds to sustain that fire station. By their own admissions, they've stated they can't provide life fire safety services. And I look at what's happening, and I'm aghast. I don't understand how it can happen that we can approve projects of this magnitude when we can't provide basic services. Now, I've been there since about 95. I was burned out in 96. And if you've been in that situation before, and you're watching your animals running through the fire, getting hung up on barbed wire, it's not a fun experience. I don't want to see that happen again. The thing that was most damaging was the roads are so narrow, we couldn't vacate with our animals and our horse trailers because they were bringing in emergency equipment. And you talk about the Garson overpass. It's impassable when there's any sort of an emergency, and that's our only salvation to get out. I applaud you guys. You're in a very bad spot, and you want to do best practices. Best practices to me would dictate that you don't grow unless you have the capacity to service that growth. And when we talk about these projects, the water is 2 years downstream, the overpass is 15 years downstream, and the sewer isn't in there yet, but yet we're going to go ahead and do it anyway. I just ask you to please come out, drive the country lanes, see the kids playing, see the horses, and you'll understand why this doesn't fit. I thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next, Lawrence Belli.
My name is Lawrence Belli. I've been here 80 years, so I think I know something, but I can't remember too much. My biggest problem, which shouldn't be brought up, is the high density of 1 and 2. The Belli Ranch has a petition into the city signed by 100% that we don't want it. At least we have it on the record, whether we do anything about it. The reason we couldn't do anything about it was we weren't notified. That alone makes it what I call morally and legally illegal. That changed the zoning on that piece, which was originally the other half of the Blue Heron subdivision. It run into problems with water flooding and percolation, and then the developer went broke anyway. And then the other problem is the water situation. I built the first house there and drilled the first well on the Blue Heron subdivision. I've got 2 wells. Another one is officially irrigation well. We've gone through the state process for it. Both wells started out at 200 feet. Now they're at 500 feet, and they both deliver half as much water. A lot of the hydrologists will tell you people, oh, we've had a big year. There's all kinds of water. The water table has gone up. The water table doesn't mean nothing. What means anything is a recovery of that. On the Blue Heron subdivision, there was an artesian spring that was there forever. It is now gone. below my house, which was the old Hanson Ranch, we had a running spring. It's gone. And the water on the 4 ranches that Boomtown had acquired was the irrigating water. It was about half has been sold into Reno years ago. Now they come back and go to the state engineer and ask for water out of the basin. That water now, no matter if it's Tumwa or whoever, Boomtown, that water now is going to be, most of it's going to be pumped out of our basin, which is actually illegal. It's going to be delivered to the sewer plant down the Sparks, causing us further damages. And then, well, as far as other problems, take the eastbound ramp at the Garson Road interchange. Try to get on it. It's the shortest approach to the freeway. You better hit that about 70 miles an hour, because if you don't get in the traffic pattern, you're right on the big bridge trying to crowd back into the thing. And then the flooding, they have a bad flooding problem out there on this particular piece of ground. And Belli Ranch is about a combination. Belli Ranch, Blue Heron is 100 acres, about 100 houses, and they want to put 78 houses on about 50 acres. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Fletcher Gilson.
Fletcher Gilson, Belli Ranch. Tonight I just want to kind of talk about a little bit of the way these meetings have been conducted as far as truth and facts. We seem to get a lot of high-dollar lawyers in here and a lot of engineers. They come before these boards and they tell a lot of stories. One of those would be their agreement with Steamboat Ditch. They have constantly professed that they've got something going there. I have personally talked to Steamboat's engineer and asked him the day before the meeting, when they come and tell us all this, that they've got some kind of agreement going. It's a complete lie. They don't have anything going. I asked him, I said, have you seen any plans? Any plans at all? Have you got any kind of agreement? And the answer is no. Yet they continue to come in here and try and convince you what they're doing. The flood problem over there is very serious, and it went to the point of flooding over the I-80 on-ramp. It was shut down by the Highway Patrol. And that actually involves everybody from DOT to the feds. But yet, we keep asking these questions, and they come up with nothing. They have not contacted these people. They do not have any kind of agreement. And just under those circumstances, I don't see how you can approve anything. They say that area back there, the 120, is not a floodplain, but yet the thing has flooded so many times it's ridiculous. We showed pictures, several hundred feet of the road being flooded, and yet they sit there and tell us that everything's being handled. They've got some kind of agreement. Well, they don't have any kind of agreement with Steamboat Ditch, and they've never shown us anything. Yet they just keep coming back and basically lying to you. This thing with Tumwa, with the water, I mean, basically we bypassed the PUC and got Tumwa in there, which is great. I'm really happy to have Tumwa in there, but I'd like to see some water in there. Last time I talked to John Enlow, there hasn't been one drop of water added to this area. And you've got the state engineer who's got all these plans and goes back into the 50s when the whole valley was irrigated. Well, 28% of that water goes back into the ground. None of it's going back into the ground now. And as Lawrence Belli talked about, the wells there are going down. I personally have a tape that goes down and checks the well depths. And we've done this throughout the community, and they are going down. And to sit here and say that it's not a problem and keep approving projects before Tumwa gets in there, I think is just beyond consciousness. Anyway, that's really all I have to say, and I thank you for your time.
A number of additional ones here that have indicated that they do not wish to make a statement, but I'll state your name anyway in case you check the box wrong. Kathy Mead. It's indicated she is in opposition. This project is the same as heard previously. The June Planning Commission stated the city could not support the development. All of these projects still get access through the casino parking lot. Thoughtful development is what is needed. Pat Mead, also in opposition. Kathleen Smith, in opposition. Traffic, infrastructure, fire, police, school. I want to see all development plans, not piecemeal. Catherine Smith, in opposition. Poorly planned, dangerous for current residents, lack of consideration for water, sewer, and roads without improvement space. Vignon Tinkham, in opposition. Jean, back to that, I can try, I can't read it. As opposed to the developments, Meridian 3 and 4, rural area can't accommodate the development with schools, fire, water infrastructure, Boomtown Garson overpass must be widened. Number of proposed building in our small town is outrageous. Keep the building on large range that go with what is in the area. Protect us from the big city building. Next, Casey Corbett. In opposition, council remanded back to planning commission. It was 1 to 6 development. There's been no improvements to any infrastructure. And Carly Orchard, also in opposition. Callie, do you have any additional requests to speak for us on this item?
I do not.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment on this item? You made public comment on the first one, so you can make it on this one as a separate item. You will have to fill out a form with Callie when you're done, please, just so we have a record.
Thank you again. It was mentioned that you here make the recommendations and then the city council makes the final decision. Where do we as the community have a say? We love our community. We love what we do. And as I mentioned, I am a developer. Our family since 1895, 5 generations. We've been through this, but we've done it with the community. We haven't done it behind doors. Why is this going on? Why is Lemon Valley, Swan Lake, Meridian 120, 1 through 6, why is this happening? What happened to the checklist with Mortons and Garson? There was a list. I can guarantee you the list is not being completed. So we go ahead and build because we have the land, and then the developers go away. Is this a monopoly game? It's not. I'm in agreement with all of you, and I thank all of you for being here. And I hope that the city council will listen to the community who's paying the taxes. Who else is going to be? The developers aren't going to contribute to the fire, to the emergency, to water. Colorado River, anybody know about that? We've lost water. My father was the chairman for the Metropolitan Water District for over 38 years. And guess what? He developed the reclamation water. Why? Because he devoted his life to protect water. I hope that the community understands that we are in serious trouble here. People are going to die because we don't have the proper exits. Animals are going to die because they can't escape. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And I hope that City Council remands it 1 through 6 so we don't have to spend our time, our energy, our emotions because of developers who don't take responsibility. Thank you.
Okay, with that, I am going to go ahead and, I didn't actually open the item, but I'm going to go ahead and move on our agenda to item 7.1. Again, that Meridian project has been rescheduled for October the 3rd. With that, next on the agenda, case number LDC 19-00027, Sage Point number 7. And we'll start with a presentation from the applicants.
Good evening, Matthias Hughes for the record. I'm the market officer for Prologis, and I'm based here in Reno with responsibility over the entire state of Nevada for us. I'd like to mention our team in attendance with Vince, Paul, and John. I'd also like to thank staff for their attention and diligence and their support for approval of this project. I think we can all empathize with the residents up there that have spoken out not only tonight, but at prior meetings. My heart and Prologis' heart goes out to all those affected by the flooding in that region. But while we say that, I think we can acknowledge, when we acknowledge that our proposed project is on Swan Lake's doorstep. But we do believe it to be designed thoughtfully. This isn't only respect to the future homes across Lear, but with regard to our on-site retention. I'm not an engineer, so to discuss technical details, I'll hand it off to Vince once I'm done. But I do want to highlight a concern regarding lack of maintenance in retention ponds that has been brought up at several of these meetings. I'm here to tell you, I'm responsible for Prologis' assets here locally. I can assure you we're in full support of ongoing maintenance of those, not only on this development, but anything that we own of the 5 million feet in town. Beyond that, we really do believe that our project is a good fit within the area. To get to this site, you have to pass 5 other warehouses, so it's already in an industrial area. The latest of which is very similar in height. We've also designed this to exceed the minimum setback required by code. Between both of those, we believe that our project is substantially conforming with the neighborhood and really the master plan. We also attempted to be mindful with regard to the orientation of the asset. It's perpendicular to Lear, with double row of trees on the frontage. Our intent with this was really threefold, to reduce the impact of the view shed for the homeowners that on their houses that haven't been built yet across Lear, to reduce the noise impacts for those homeowners, and then to reduce the light impact to those residents, and not unimportantly, the nature observatory behind our warehouse. In addition, we've also agreed to an hours of operating restriction. So, to be good partners, it's really quite important to us. We've also provided a traffic and a noise study. Paul's here if you have any traffic questions that shows we are in compliance with code. Lastly, I do want to mention sustainability, or second to last, sustainability. We are designing this building to LEED standards. So, again, we're one of the most sustainable companies in the world, consistently ranked in the top 100 in the world, and it's important to us, not just here but everywhere. And then sewer. I know sewer is a hot button, and we understand that sewer capacity is extraordinarily limited. And we acknowledge that even if you guys say today, yes, you are entitled, you have your approval for your special use permit, we know that's not an implied guarantee that capacity will be available to us once we go to build this warehouse. So we completely understand all those factors. Just in summation, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to partner with you all, with the city, and with the residents out there. And we'll hand over the rest of my time to Vince to go over some more technical portions about stormwater mitigation, and then John and Paul for the questions. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Planning Commission. For the record, Vince Griffith, Reno Engineering. You might remember we were here a couple months ago and voluntarily took a break or a timeout because there were some things being discussed about solutions to the drainage issues in that area. And I guess the thought that comes to mind is it's a painful process, which you guys know very well, but it does work. And so with this slide here, I just wanted to go over some of the things that since we were last here and we voluntarily took that time out, what are some of the things that have been going on with the drainage and the sewer issues in that area? If I could have the projector for that, that'd be great. Is it possible? Yeah, perfect. You may be well aware of this, but let's put this on the record as well as just talk about it. And I think this commission can take credit for some of these things because these weren't in the works prior to maybe the denial of the sewer plant expansion. But the first and foremost is the sewer plant expansion here, I have listed as number 1, has been approved by council to go forward with design. And I was in that meeting, I listened into that meeting, I was not part of it, and you can certainly get some of this information verified by staff. But as I understand it, staff, city council was very clear about future sewer expansion in this area is not going to discharge to the lake. I don't think that would have necessarily been such an important item had this body not made that an issue, and the citizens not made it an issue, which goes back to it's a painful process, but it is working. The city of Reno has put $3 million aside to put a relief pipe in. So you may have already known that, but I'm here to also put that on the record. And that's happened since we were last here, right? And that pipe is shown on this exhibit here, and that'll take water in a pump from Swan Lake and go up to north of the airport property and actually discharge that onto the surface for land application. And that'll have an immediate effect. I don't know what the latest schedule is for construction, what we're expecting first quarter of next year. That was not on the table when we were here last. Third, inspections. I know there's dozens of inspections city staff has now completed in the basins, the existing retention basins in the area, and those are ongoing. And then fourth, the flow shave. As I understand it, a portion of the flow shave is going towards diverting flows that would normally go to Swan Lake from the sewer plant and away. Now that's a lot of background on the area, but I think it's very important to cage the next or bookend the comments about our particular project because help is on its way. I am not here to say those 4 items are the solution to the flood issues in that basin, but it's certainly a grand start compared to where we were at maybe a year ago. This is our site, and that's the floodplain. We will be building our project outside of the floodplain. This is the project currently, the project. And I must not explain this very well because I know that I leave the meeting and talk to residents, and this point doesn't really get across, I don't think. But currently, here's the way the staff has required these projects to be constructed. As I understand the code, currently water runs off this project right here, right into the lake. That's a fact. That's existing condition, right? The proposed condition is that we build a retention basin so that no water leaves the site. And that's that 1.25 and 1.21, or maybe it should be 1.4, or whatever it is more than 1, right? So whatever water is falling there today, any number you hear over 1 is a victory, right? So if we build a pond, and several residents have suggested, and I think it's brilliant, we should expand the volume of Swan Lake. That's what this project is doing, right? When we're building a pond on our property that is expanding the volume of the lake by not allowing that water to flow into the lake. The number that we calculate, existing flows, that's all we're taking credit for, is existing flows. I don't want to sit here today and say, oh, we're retaining over and above. Well, we're creating some additional runoff with asphalt, right? So we're not taking credit for that. But the net amount that we're reducing is a football field 5.3 feet deep. That's a good, I mean, you can search on the internet for hours, but this is the one I found that had some water in it. So it just gives you an idea of volume. Is that going to solve all the Lemon Valley problems and flooding? Absolutely not. Is it going to solve the sewer plant issues and capacity problems? No. But it's important to say that project by project, are these folks holding their own? Are they doing their part? And I'm here to tell you that because of the requirements that city staff has put on these projects, a project of this size holding its own. It's keeping water from going into the lake that's now currently going to the lake. And that's the little engineering drawing, right? So I did the math on this. We're about the retention pond that's being constructed with this project is 35% of the total building size. Those are some big ponds, right? When you do a housing development or a car wash, and they're on an acre, and they do their part, right? And they build a little pond, right? Well, you can have probably 100 of those, approve 100 of those, or approve one of these, and you're going to get the same net effect. So we're happy to, and it is code, we're going to stay out of the floodplain. We're going to keep water from going to the lake. Any kind of maintenance requirements on these retention basin, you've heard the client specifically say they're happy to have a condition put on them to make sure they are maintaining these. This client, and we work with a lot of clients, but these are the guys that are willing to do their part. Will it solve all the woes of the area? No. But they're doing their part. So if you keep approving projects like this, we can kind of paint ourselves out of the room, in my humble opinion. And I guess last but not least, and I won't waste all the time because we might have traffic questions, is at 88 years old, Mr. Bell, I was quite articulate. I hope I'm that articulate at 88. I just hope I'm not still coming to these meetings at 88. Thank you.
All right. You got anything else?
I think we're good unless there's a question.
All right. Well, then we'll move on to a presentation from staff, and then should be any questions. Nathan, good evening.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Looking sharp tonight, we'll say.
Thank you very much.
I just didn't want that to go unnoticed.
I appreciate it. All right, good evening, Commissioners. For the record, Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. I'm just going to get a brief overview of the request. There we go. So the request at hand is a special use permit for residential adjacency. The request is a 538,000 square foot warehouse and distribution center adjacent to single family zoning, which requires an approved special use permit. Just to give a little bit of background of the area, the subject site is located above Lear Boulevard, which is a minor arterial. The entire area, including the Stoneville subdivision, originally was zoned for industrial uses in the mid-90s. In 2003, what became the Stoneville subdivision was converted to single-family zoning and master plan designations. But historically, this entire area has been an industrial development with the majority of the Sage Point projects being done in the 90s, the most recent being done last year. The subject site itself is adjacent to Washington County Regional Park. It's the Swan Lake Nature area directly to the north. It has industrial zoning to the east and to the west. Although Washington County Parks does have a access easement along this major drainage way and the road to their Washington County Regional Park on this parcel, which is otherwise zoned industrial. As a point of record, when the Stonefield subdivision map came for approval, there was a condition of approval that disclosure be provided to homeowners at sales of the existing and future industrial development that would occur to the north. Vince kind of hit the highlights here. Council's direction from their workshop is related to retention basins, so the mitigation be a minimum of 1.3 to 1, and that's what will be conditioned with our recommended conditions of approval. When we talk about development in the floodplain, we're talking about less than 0.5% of the actual site area. So there would be limited development in the very northwest corner of the parking lot, as they proposed, would be in the AE floodplain. require all mitigation, and they need approval from FEMA for their Clemar maps. So I just want to highlight real quickly some of the recommended conditions that we have as pertains to residential adjacency. Condition number 5 outlines a 5-foot berm around the entire perimeter with a double row of evergreen trees. We've learned this through some of the larger projects that have come to fruition and matured a little bit, that we really need to enhance some of this interface, and particularly along all sides. And the applicant has agreed to this condition. We feel it's important to protect this major drainage way and access to the nature area on the west side and the north, and potential residential views along the eastern perimeter and of course the front. Condition number 6 requires verification of truck light containment, particularly with the nature study areas in the north. We don't want truck headlights coming into the open space area, so they'll have to provide documentation that all truck lights are being contained on the site and not being spilled over. Condition number 17 relates to dark skies and the no spillover of any on-site lighting. Condition number 14 is restricted hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. This came from their sound study. It came pretty close with the trucks operating at night. Will be slightly over our allowable noise, and so they've agreed to restrict their hours of operation. Condition number 20 relates to wall signs. It prohibits them, would limit them to an 8-foot maximum monument sign height. Condition number 8, again, this is council directive on the 1-3-1 volume mitigation and operation manual and maintenance program adopted for the site. Condition number 13 relates to the rideshare program for traffic reduction and air quality. 15 relates to no outdoor storage and activities. This is to enhance the residential compatibility. And condition number 16 related to restrictions on truck idling. That concludes my presentation with the adopted conditions. Staff can recommend approval of the request. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Nathan. Before I open for public comment, I'll ask the commissioners for disclosure, starting with Commissioner Olivas.
Commissioner Olivas, I received email on this.
Commissioner Marshall, no disclosures.
Commissioner Taylor, I received an email and I spoke with the applicant's representative.
Mr. Johnson received and read the email, visited the site.
Commissioner Hawkins, as did I.
Commissioner Gower received read email, corresponded with the applicant's representative, and have previously visited the site.
Thank you. I do have a couple of request to speak forms on this item, starting with Tim Fada.
Thank you. Tim Fada again for the record. 55-year resident. Lived in Lemon Valley for the past 45 years. I totally am against this project. First of all, again, as I said, responsibility. My first statement to you guys, who is really responsible? You're going to be held responsible for their project and whatever. History repeats itself. Remember that. If we don't learn from history, we'll repeat ourselves and we'll fail. First off, the retention pond and this whole little deal here, this is the boundary. I'll use this map. The retention pond's right in the floodplain. The blue line is actually the boundary of the lake today. So we're building on a floodplain. Again, we're building on a floodplain. Yes, the other warehouses, this is the lake boundary. That's not the floodplain. This is the lake boundary. This is the floodplain, and this whole area is floodplain. Here's another map we can go and take a look at. This shows the lake and the flooded area. This area was flooded 1.5 years ago. Soggy, ugly, whatever. They're going to bring in 8 or 10 feet of fill. Okay? Their retention pond, how deep are they going to dig it? They're going to dig it deeper than the level of the lake. So what's going to happen with the water? It's going to percolate in. The state would not allow the county to go dredge the lake. How can they go do that? Again, let's go back. I said history repeats itself. I'll show you a map This map here is of the project. Imagine that project with this big warehouse. It's going to be there like here. Here's a project you guys approved a few years ago. This is a lake. That's Silver Lake. This is the yellow line was the lake boundary. This is the floodplain they built in the floodplain, the Petco warehouse. What happened? History's going to repeat itself. That 67-acre project infiltrated into Silver Lake, which caused the Lemon Valley Lake and everything we're talking about today. In 1978, a U.S. Geological Survey report was done, presented to the City Council, the Planning Commission at that time, which you guys weren't here. And it definitely stated, do not build in the 5 little lakes and the floodplains in that area. They will not sustain it. All I can say is at this time, from what I heard earlier from the Garson people in this project, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for a moratorium. We don't have enough infrastructure out there. Garson doesn't. A moratorium is your savings grace. Have a moratorium, let everything get resolved. That's what we need. That's your answer. This building shouldn't happen. Thank you.
Next is Lori Beach.
Lori Beach for the record. As I've said many times before, it's beyond me to tell a property owner who has lawfully purchased their property and is following all code what they can and can't do, no more than I want to be told how many connexes I can have or storage units I can have on my own property, so I do say that openly. I am glad to see it went from the 1.25 to 1.3, but the pipe that the gentleman was talking about is a temporary pipe. The airport authority has made that very, very clear, that it would take FAA regulation or approval for that pipe to go permanent at any point. It is a temporary pipe from 2 to 5 years, I believe, is what it was said. While it is help, I do appreciate it. Let's pump that water on out, as I've said many times. The land is impervious. Unless I'm wrong, the gentleman's talking about a football field of water. While I appreciated his picture, my understanding is that a retention pond only has to hold for 7 days, and then they are allowed to drain that water. Where are they going to drain it? They're going to drain it to Swan Lake, if indeed I am not mistaken. If I'm mistaken, correct me. As far as the input from the citizen, here's an input from a citizen that I would like to see. If you're going to have that retention pond, I would hope that you would put in a way to pump that water that you're holding in that retention pond to irrigate your own plantings that you showed. I'm not sure you would appreciate me using his pictures, but to go against him, but the foliage that he had around the property, I would like to see maybe have a way to put a pump in there. And there's a positive use you could do with some stormwater. A positive that if it is indeed fact that after 7 days you can dump that into Swan Lake, maybe we can get some valuable use out of it to feed his own plantings and then also save his own company some water use. That's about all I have for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Any additional requests to speak forms on this item?
We do not on this item.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment on this item? Seeing none, I will close that and bring it back to the commission for questions. I'd like to get us started. Mr. Gowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start it off. First question, I guess general question for Nathan, regarding our scope of decision and what would essentially be approved without, what would be allowed through building permit without discretionary review in front of this board? What is the trigger for it coming to us?
Thank you, Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. The trigger is the residential zoning, the SF6 zoning south of Lear Boulevard. That's the only reason that the special use permit is required from this request.
Okay, thank you. My next question related to the residential adjacency then, I think I'll direct it to maybe John if you want to field it, regarding building height. So I'm get to the right page here. We're looking at 44-foot tall building, which is exceeding the allowable height in the IC zone. Can you talk to me about why that is, I guess, number one, and then number two, what the process is for mitigating or allowing for that additional 4-foot height?
So, good evening, John Krumpata with KLS Planning, also representing the applicant Prologis. There's an industry issue here, the typical now, and you saw this recently with Makita went to 44 feet in height. It's a clear view area, and there's a volume situation here. But if you wanted to get into the industry part of it, I would defer to Matthias. This particular code, I allows 45 feet, IC allows 40. It doesn't address the industry issue. They need 44 feet. A couple of things going on. So we wanted to do a minor deviation, less than 10% change, to go from 40 to 44 feet, or just under 44 feet. Also, in terms of the kind of gateway of industrial or big box warehouse that comes in on Lear Boulevard, those are 15 inches shorter than the 42.9, the nearest building. So we're trying to address the industry standard and then also do something that's consistent with what really is existing out there, 42.9 versus 44. That's kind of what's going on. And then if you look at, if you picked our code apart and look at height to setback ratio, right? The most aggressive code I've ever seen and applied in a residential adjacency is the 1-to-3 height to setback ratio. In this case, we have building to building about, if you look at 44-foot height next to the closest residential from where that building is about 1 to 4.5 height to setback ratio. So very generous in the context of the most aggressive standard we have in the city of Reno.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Nathan, can you just outline John mentioned the minor deviation, you have that in your staff report. Can you just talk to me about what that process looks like? We've got a zoning designation that allows for a certain height. They're asking for a little bit more. You're recommending approval based on this deviation process. Can you kind of talk to me a little bit about what that looks like?
Thank you for bringing that up. I'm Nathan Gilbert for the record. I did bring that up in the staff report because we do want the Planning Commission's input on that. A minor deviation is an administrative decision, so there's an application and a fee, and it's done by the zoning administrator. What is required is the written consent of all abutting property owners. In this instance, that would include Washoe County and Lennar, who's building the subdivision that this is affecting. So it would need their written approval. The Planning Commission would like to provide staff with some direction on that. If up or down, we would certainly be receptive to that.
Okay. Thanks, Nathan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I've got.
Just on that point, I'm sorry, I marked it someplace, but I'm trying to get to the condition on the height.
The height's not conditioned. It's 40 foot unless they are granted a minor deviation. So they're requesting 44. But that's outside of the approval process for the Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission, what we're approving is a 40-foot.
Correct. And if the Commission would like to provide staff with some direction on the perceived appropriateness of a possibility of a 10% increase in height, we would be receptive to that.
But that's the discretion of the zoning administrator. Doesn't come before us.
Correct.
So all we're doing now is approving a 40-foot building.
Correct.
But their intention is to go get 4 more.
That's their stated intention.
Commissioners, additional questions? Commissioner Taylor.
Thank you, Nathan. I have a question. In your presentation, you mentioned that there was a disclosure to residences, that there was going to be industrial built.
Yes, with the Stonefield subdivision, one of the conditions of approval for that subdivision was that that disclosure be provided in closing documents.
And that did happen?
To the best of my knowledge.
There are no residents.
The-
The project's not built.
Mr. Chairman.
The Lennar subdivision to the south is currently under construction, correct?
And there's a disclosure in there.
That was a condition of approval for their subdivision.
Okay. And then to the public comment, can you address the 7 days in the pond? Can they discharge after 7 days?
I defer that to Mike Michelle, our engineering manager.
Good evening, Mike Michelle, planning manager, engineering manager, sorry. I really don't want the job. Let me talk about the 7 days. There was a comment made that after 7 days that a basin could be pumped and it could flow down to Swan Lake. That's not the code requirement. The code requirement is for a retention basin, and when you have a retention basin, the water stays there and it percolates and or evaporates. It does not get pumped out.
Thank you. I have one more question, I think. Nathan? Whose responsibility is it for enforcement after, when the project's being built, to make sure all of these measures are in place and enforced?
Nathan Gilbert, so are you talking specifically about the retention basin?
The retention basin, the ponds, to make sure that as the applicant, or so that nothing gets discharged into Swan Lake.
That would be a code enforcement issue. One condition, 8 or 9, I can't remember, has the requirement for an operations and maintenance manual, so staff will be approving that, reviewing and approving that, making sure that it is comprehensive to achieve the objectives. But ultimately, enforcement of that will be through code enforcement.
So that's where the responsibility would lie?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then one more question. In the background information, it says that the truck bays, one of the previous projects was denied because the truck bays were facing the residential subdivision.
In that instance, that...
So my question is, the truck bays face residents?
Correct. Yeah, that was, staff did not recommend approval on that, and actually the applicant didn't even show up to that hearing. It was denied by planning commission, but there's no discussion.
But for this project?
Staff on that project, staff did not support it because the truck bays were directly facing the residences, and we just simply couldn't support that. In this instance, it's designed the opposite. There's no truck bays.
There's no truck bays?
No.
All right, thank you.
Mike, I'm sorry, I should have jumped in while you were up there. If you could come back for just a second. So the discussion about the retention basin, percolate or evaporate. So basically under that scenario, you're looking at this more as a detention basin that doesn't have an outlet? Or is it a retention basin that does have an outlet?
Yeah, you could look at a retention basin as a detention basin that has no outlet. I mean, a retention basin is basically a hole in the ground. A detention basin is also a hole, but it has an outlet that allows a certain amount of flow to exit the basin.
A detention basin?
A detention basin does that. The requirement here is for a retention basin wherein it holds, in the conditions of approval, 130% of the increase runoff caused by the development. And it holds it for 7 days, and it is required to percolate within 7 days. So after 7 days, it should be dry.
Okay. Vince, please. Thanks, Mike.
Yes,
I'm not an engineer, but I'm going to get wonky for a second. Geotechnical report, as noted, is all clay, doesn't perk. In order to retain 3 times, or 1 to 3, 3 to 1, excuse me, or 1.3, I'll get the dimensions right there for a second, and have it either evaporate or percolate, how much additional soil needs to be removed in order to fill it with a material that will perk that much water in 7 days?
Right, so that, Vince Griffith for the record, Reno Engineering. That's an excellent question, so geek out on it for a second, right? It's clay out there, which is why if you build this basin, it's not going to just infiltrate into the existing lake. And that's the problem, is the existing lake doesn't percolate, right? I mean, that's a big part of the problem. So let's get back to your specific question. The Makita project that we're working on just up the street that was approved by this body not too long ago, they have the same issue. You have to go through the clay, beyond the clay, and find percolable soils. Whatever that depth is, it is. So when you approve this, and the conditions are that we have to meet the engineering requirements, the contractor and design team has to make that work. And so how they made it work at Makita, and that's an ongoing project being constructed right now, is they had to dig down, do perk tests until they found the right soil layer, and then at that point, then they can build back up and let the pond seep in or percolate. Calculation is pretty simple. It's like a septic system, right? I mean, once you know the percolation rate, you have to design the amount of square footage that'll actually soak that water out in 7 days. And so it's not a model that takes 7 days to run on a supercomputer. It's pretty simple.
So the understanding is you are obviously going to have to remove more than just the stated material in order to get to that point and have something that is designed to function.
Affirmative and cost of doing business.
And then under the, going back to code enforcement, my understanding is that if it doesn't go out in 7 days, that's where we get into vector control and issues with the county. So that's the reason why we have to have the code enforcement aspect of making sure that it works and making sure that we're doing maintenance to allow that to continue to happen.
That is the reason. And so this percolation thing is really to make vector control happy. I would think a lot of the residents here would be a lot happier if we were just holding water for evaporation and expanding the lake.
Thank you.
Please, Commissioner. Mr. Griffith? Oh, yeah. Sorry, couldn't get there fast enough. So where's the water going? I mean, it's percolating to groundwater?
To an aquifer underneath the basin, yes.
Which is disconnected from the lake?
And that would be the debate that we might have publicly here. But here's the problem, is if Swan Lake was percolating into the groundwater table below, then it would be gone by now. Well, the problem is there's a clay liner, so we're breaching that clay liner that's holding that water in Swan Lake now and getting to the aquifer below.
And then the aquifers, can you state, or maybe I should ask our engineer, that that's not connected to the lake, so it has no influence on the lake?
Correct. So as we stated here, as we say, once that water percolates in, it's not bubbling up and then somehow, magic ability to kind of come back up through the clay liner underneath Swan Lake and into the lake.
Okay, thank you. And is it John, our engineering? Mike, sorry, apologize.
Engineering / planning.
Engineering
Yeah,
yes.
Mike Michelle, engineering.
Would you agree with Mr. Griffith's statement that it is not? I have a thing about names.
Yeah, you know, I would say I can't disagree with them, but I mean, honestly, I don't know how hydrologically these things are connected.
So you don't know that if they are or they're not?
I don't, but I couldn't disagree with them. I mean, it's a plausible explanation that they're not, but I don't know that for a fact. I never studied it.
So we are building retention basins, or the theory of what we're trying to do and to allow development is to build retention basins that need to perk in 7 days.
Correct.
But we don't know where that water is going to end up.
I presume the water goes to a groundwater table. Now, how that groundwater table is connected, if it is, to Swan Lake, I don't know that answer.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Marshall, additional questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Sorry, I just stop cold there for a second. Vince? So, we heard public testimony that it's in the floodplain. And I think I heard you say that it's not in the floodplain.
Correct. And then just to make it easy, you just call me Brit's dad, and that would be easier. If
Yeah,
that helps you remember the name.
Brit's name.
The map actually happens to be up right now. And so inside the floodplain, outside the floodplain, it might surprise you to know that when the federal government every once in a while maps a floodplain, they don't actually draw on this map at that scale something that can be transposed directly to a project, right? So what this says is, though, it sets the elevation at 4924. So using hardcore survey with 1 foot accuracy, we know where 4924, that contour line is. That's the blue line. That's not the lake. That's the 4924. So we are outside the floodplain elevation for this project.
I think underneath the first, the bottom layer of your exhibits, there is a picture of the current or close to current lake elevation.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
So right there.
Yep.
So that to me looks like the lake is above the floodplain from your prior drawing, or your prior line about, because the blue line was fairly far to my right of the eastern border of the property.
Agreed. And so this is very germane, and this is very important, right? Because information that comes up and citizens come up. What you're looking at there is the full parcel, correct? So keep an eye on that little corner here, right there.
Yeah.
And then look at our map, where the corner is actually off the property. We did not use the entire portion of the property. And so if you juxtapose those two, you would find actually that the blue line, if I had to guess here, that blue line and the existing lake line are probably about similar. So you're looking at the whole parcel. If you were to look at the two of them next to each other, and I don't have a before and after here. So, but we're just not building out the whole parcel. You can see how far detention basin is, retention basin is from the property line.
So in essence, you're both right. That is, the blue line is the lake line.
And also the 100-year flood.
No. And you're saying based on elevation, it's your delineation of the 100-year floodplain.
Yes, sir. And another way to state it is our design concept was to totally stay outside of the 100-year floodplain. And we did that by knowing what the elevation was, having accurate topo, and designing this project to be outside the floodplain.
How long has the lake been at that elevation? Do you know?
You know, it's much lower than what you're looking at there. That's probably the peak, and that's on the Washoe County website, I think. So I don't know the exact date of that photograph, but I think that was the, I'm going to say the worst case scenario.
Okay. Mike, can I ask you, would you agree that that's the map, the photo with the lake elevation, or that's showing the lake? Yeah, that one, that photo, yeah. Is that worst condition? Do you know whether or not how close it's been to the high water line for the last couple of years, for 100-year floodplain?
I would say what you're seeing in the photo right there is probably the worst case.
Okay.
If I may, Commissioner, the information presented to the Planning Commission and in your packet is the information provided by the applicant, which delineates that there's a small percentage in the designated floodplain. I just want to be clear that that this may well be the case, but the application material was evaluated based on the current mapping.
Okay. Nathan, while you're there, I have another question. I'm going to shift to something else. I don't know if anyone else wants a question about this topic. So the 700,000 project was denied in 2018. Square foot project was denied in 2018. Were there other, and now you're proposing, and I just can't remember, unfortunately. Were there other bases in which the Planning Commission, or did you address all the bases for the Planning Commission's actions in 2018 in this project?
That 2018 project, it wasn't even heard. The applicant didn't show up, so staff had a recommendation of denial, and that was primarily based on the size and orientation of the bays. But again, the applicant didn't show up, so the Planning Commission just turned it down without much comment.
So without discussion?
Yeah.
Okay. Can you So one of the master plan policies that you talk about as this project being consistent with is goal 1.2B, modern industrial hub. And this is probably my own, I'm trying to figure out the difference between what is meant by modern logistics operations is right at the bottom of page 6. And is that just another name for a warehouse?
Yes. Logistics centers.
Logistics centers.
Warehouse and distribution.
Okay. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Additional questions, Commissioners? Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Okay. Commissioner Gower?
My question is related to, again, residential adjacency and the noise study that was conducted and staff's finding about the noise, potential noise impacts relative to the truck traffic that wasn't really addressed in the noise study. Nathan, can you just address how the mitigation that's being proposed would address that exceedance of the noise at the property line?
Nathan Gilbert, for the record. The sound study contemplated the effects that they're different at nighttime, so the allowable thresholds during the day are greater than what's allowed at night. And so the sound study done by Bullard Consultants indicated that they would anticipate that truck traffic would exceed that nighttime threshold. And so that's where the condition on hours of operation came from.
So the hours of operation eliminates the nighttime noise, so we're not worried about daytime noise at all with...
It's within the prescribed thresholds of code.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Any Commissioners, additional questions? Discussion? Commissioner Hawkins?
No, I was just going to entertain a motion to make this thing move.
Let's see if there's any discussion first. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Commissioner Marshall?
Thank you. So I'm probably in the minority here, but I just what struck me is looking at page 11 and the difference between the parking requirements for office and warehouse, and how that relates to me is we're looking at the North Valleys, and we're looking at, as everyone has admitted, extraordinarily limited sewage capacity. And we're being asked to kind of make decisions, I think, on what project should go forward, given that situation. And to me, it kind of gets back to, in some sense, what we're talking about sustainability. But the project we're being asked is another warehouse in an industrial area, so taking up industrial land adjacent to the lake, that does not actually produce I don't know whether it's significant or not, but the capacity of the land for producing jobs is relatively low. It's a warehouse. Whether you call it a modern logistics center or a warehouse. And what I'm concerned about is using industrial land and in the North Valleys for a use like, and I've gone on, I think I asked before about storage facilities or mini storage, that they're not job producers. And is this, I'd love feedback from the Planning Commission on is it an appropriate consideration here to say this mix of factors for this particular project are not really driving us towards, you look at the way that I read goal one is to really focus on modern industrial hub and particularly manufacturing industries. And is this the kind of use we want to approve at this time, given all our limitations that we have in the North Valleys? And that was kind of at least what I'm wrestling with in terms of support for this project, in addition to the fact that a rather troubling, no fault through mine, answer to questions about where the water's going. And the whole concept of our retention, I think, philosophy up there is that it's not adding to the lake, it's being retained. And that, we don't know whether it's actually contributing to the lake or not, to the lake levels. And that's troubling. So those are, for discussion points, those are my comments at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner Marshall. Additional discussion items? Commissioner Gowan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we have a challenging job sitting up here making these decisions. We're being presented with information or maybe would want a little bit more information relative to the findings. I mean, I think we always want to be 100% sure in our decisions. I think that's, in any case, you want to be 100% sure when you make a decision. Commissioner Marshall, I share your concerns of receiving an answer of, I don't know if the surface water and groundwater is hydrologically connected, or I don't know if it's going to create more of an issue in the North Valleys. Honestly, every time we see a project out here, we get an answer that, we're doing all this great stuff, and yes, it's all this great stuff, but at the end of the day, we don't really know. And it makes me feel that I don't really know what the right decision is. On the same hand, this came to us for residential adjacency, and the applicant has come in and said that they're going to do all of the mitigations, and staff has put all of these conditions on it. And quite frankly, if it didn't require the special use permit, it would have gone to staff, and staff said it meets all of these requirements for residential adjacency because we have all these conditions and the applicant is offering up all this stuff. So that leads me to believe that even though Mike said I don't know if the basins are hydrologically connected, that what the applicant is proposing is enough for them to be able to approve this project based on their expertise. So how am I to argue with that level of expertise? I'm not a hydrologist. I don't know if the basins are connected or not connected. From a sustainability perspective, Commissioner Marshall, I would agree with you. I mean, there are a whole lot of other uses that I get more excited about than warehouses from a sustainability perspective. But I mean, I'm looking for something to hang my hat on here that pushes me to say, no, this isn't consistent, and make a recommendation that it's not. But I'm seeing all of the I's dotted and T's crossed, other than that question of whether the basins are hydrologically connected or if it's going to impact Swan Lake. And again, I'm not a hydrologist. so can't answer that question. That's how my mind's going. It's like swirling. Does that sound like swirling? Because that's
I think it's hydrologically disconnected.
It's hydrologically disconnected. That's right.
No, it is hydro.
Commissioner Levis.
Commissioner Levis, I kind of dovetail on Commissioner Gower's comments. And Commissioner Marshall, I had thought about kind of is this the best use jobs and that. And when we kind of consider residential adjacency, I agree maybe that's not the highest best use for this, but it's their property too, so that's not my business decision. But also I think that since we are talking about residential adjacency, the more jobs we create, the more traffic we create. So that they kind of go hand in hand there. So what's the balance there? I think that so I don't think that's an issue as far as whether this is the best use for the property for it's their property and their decision, and as well as more jobs will be more negative externalities for the residential adjacency. So I don't think that's an issue.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For John, can product, please.
Yes, Commissioner Hawkins.
Could you tell me approximately how many trips are going to be generated through this new warehouse?
I think it's 900 and some, but I don't have it memorized. I think Mr. Salady has it in his pocket.
Yeah, my biggest concern is the traffic and turning into military. It's everything's going down military to up military to Echo, and at this point, everybody coming out of Lear on the east side is going to face traffic. Is there something with the developer we can chat about signalizing that intersection?
For the record, Paul Salegi is my name. We prepared the traffic study, my firm did. The trip generation, it's 937 daily trips with 90 in the morning peak hour and 102 in the evening peak hour. We analyzed intersections there at Military and Lear, Military and Lemon Valley, and then down at the interchange. We found that the intersections operated at acceptable levels of service except the Military-Lear intersection. And as we looked at possible solutions to that, going through our hierarchy of things that we check as a traffic engineer, an all-way stop would bring it up to policy levels of service throughout the 20-year forecast in the future. And this is an intersection that's a good candidate for a four-way stop. And so that was our proposed mitigation, and with that mitigation, all of the intersections will operate within the level of service standards.
So can I take it as a yes that we do need to signalize that area, or at least a four-way stop?
The four-way stop would be sufficient, and it would meet the level of service policies. You save the expense of the ongoing traffic, the power bill for the traffic signal. You save the ongoing maintenance struggle of the signal, and there are other benefits for a neighborhood with a four-way stop in terms of regulating traffic and so forth. So, in my opinion, the all-way stop is an appropriate traffic engineering solution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hawkins, just for clarification, condition 11D requires that four-way stop? You apparently did skip over that page. Good question, though. I'm glad we get that on that. I want to circle back to the discussion item that Commissioner Gower and Commissioner Marshall were talking about. What I find is interesting and what prompted it was the conversation about the height and the minor deviation for the height. And looking at that, it's because this is zoned industrial commercial. It's not zoned as industrial. Its master plan is industrial. Its zoning is industrial commercial. Industrial commercial, to the point that we're having here, per our code, provides for a mix of industrial and small-scale commercial land uses. Should be separated from residential development by natural and man-made buffers such as major greenways and arterial roadways. I think the key there is that it's a mix of industrial and small-scale commercial. And I think when I look at the zoning map, I have industrial to the west of this. And that's where I have my large warehouses with my 44 feet. To the east of this, I have large lot residential. To the south of this, I have SF6. So I look at this, and I look at it from a zoning standpoint, and I say, hey, it's zoned a step down from industrial. When the master plan or the zoning map was put together, which is what we're doing, we're planning, there was an anticipation that yes, this was zoned industrial, but the scale was going to be less intense at this point than maybe next door or closer to military. And so that's where my concern is that we're looking at a 40-foot, potentially a 44-foot building. We're looking at a single large footprint, not with truck bays facing the houses, but a solid wall. And the Makita project was mentioned, and I had some concerns on that one with regards to the height. In fact, I didn't like the height of it. I drove out there to look at this project, and I drove by that, and I still don't like it. It's too tall. The wall that's there is too close to the street, and the houses across the street from it. That was the scale that concerned me on that project. That's the scale that concerns me on this project. And I will state right now, I can't make finding E because the scale that is proposed for this building, because of the fact that the zoning has a industrial commercial, it's a step down. To me, the intent is not to have the same level of structure here as we have immediately adjacent to it. I think it can still be industrial, but I think a mix of uses or a smaller scale industrial would be more appropriate. So that's my comment. That's what I hear when I'm hearing the conversation from my other commissioners and their concerns about the residential adjacency, which is what this is in here for. And to me, I can't make the residential adjacency finding because of that scale issue. So that's my comment. Commissioners, additional comments? I stun you guys into silence or a motion. That was my comment. So moving forward, looking for additional comments or a motion. Mr. Taylor.
I'll make a motion. Is there more comment?
I'm not seeing any.
Okay, in case number LDC 1900027, based on compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject to conditions. And I can make the residential adjacency finding in the existing surrounding conditions primarily because of the disclosures to residents that should be happening or will be happening, and because of the buffering and the landscaping and the wall and the larger trees that are going in.
Hey, Commissioner, I have a motion. Looking for a second.
Commissioner Davis, I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Nay. So I have 2 votes in favor, Commissioner Lucas, Commissioner Taylor, and 4 votes opposed, Commissioner Gower, Commissioner Hawkins, Commissioner Johnson, and Commissioner Marshall. So motion fails by a vote of 4-2. So with that, I will read into the record the appeal process. A final action not including recommendation or failure to take action by the Planning Commission may be appealed to the Reno City Council by the applicant, the mayor, or city council member, or any person who is aggrieved by the action or inaction. An appeal, together with fees, must be filed with the city clerk within 10 calendar days, starting on the date after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk. And if the 10th calendar day falls on a weekend or a holiday when the clerk's office is not open, the appeal may be filed on the next business day. With that, I am going to ask for a 10-minute break because it is 8:40. So I'll take a break and come back at 10 minutes to 9. All right, colleagues, I'm assuming I don't have to ask you if we're ready because I know that we're down still, right? Okay. Well, with that said, I will go ahead and bring the commission back to order. And we will move on with item 7.2, case number LDC 20-00007, Sage Point 8. Start with a presentation from the applicant.
Good evening, Carrie Rohrmeyer for the record. Commissioners, I'm excited to present Sage Point 8 special use permit request on behalf of Prologis, also here with the client. I want to tell you a little bit about this project and then be available for discussion as well. Oh, sorry, that's on me. All right, so just to give you a little context of the area, most of the land surrounding this parcel is undeveloped. It's generally flat and it's outside of a floodplain. We're in zone X, outside the 500 here. The site is zoned industrial commercial. We're at the corner of Echo and Mount Limbo. It's 12.49 acres. And we have industrial land to the east and the west, and generally to the south, which is the Makita project that's been referenced. We're here asking for a special use permit for residential adjacency for that corner on the southwest, this corner right here, which our overlap is 20 lineal feet. So we originally went in for a building permit. We realized that during this process we required an SCP for residential adjacency. That process stopped. We are now going through the formal process of the SCP request. So it's been reviewed by staff now twice, and so we're really pending this meeting. So to give you a little aerial, or a little sense of our area, we have the Navy Reserves to the north. That's really the only development at this time. And then the lower right-hand corner is the undeveloped multifamily 30 residential zoning. So it's not developed at this particular time. So that's the general vicinity. I want to tell you about the, let's go back one. The site plan. It's 242,000 square feet. It's actually upside down. I'm not sure why. We have 2 fully landscaped front yards, and getting to Commissioner Johnson's point, which I think was really astute, we're not using landscape in the sense to overwater. We are doing 17% of the site as landscaping, and it's done very mindfully. It's large caliber trees, mostly for screening. We've positioned the truck docks very much away from any residential adjacency, which is, I think, the key to the site plan. We've put our detention basins in the corner, the retention at the 1.3 to 1 ratio mitigation. All truck docks, there are limits on hours for entering and leaving, as well as there are limitations on when activities can take place for being a good neighbor. We have, some sustainability measures, as Commissioner Gower mentioned. Trucks are not allowed to idle, and that's an ozone mitigation measure. We have what you can't really tell here, but on the north and south side of the site plan, we have put in future parking. So we can park the site as it is with just the parking in the rear of the building, and then leave areas for low impact development. Should the extra parking be needed, that meets code, within code requirements, we can build out that parking at a later time. So that's a lower need for impervious surface and therefore a better development. We also have a ride share condition of approval to minimize vehicular traffic, and an energy efficient mechanical system. So probably the most important thing of all of these considerations is the actual distance of this building from the nearby residential zoning. We're looking at 140 feet from the building to the opposite side of Echo Avenue, which is industrial, and 200 feet at its closest corner from residential zoning to this building. So again, apologies for the graphic there, but I want to show you, this is a better concept of what it'll look like. At its highest point, it's 39 feet, so it's within the IC zoning that is 40 feet. We think it's an appropriate fit, scale, size, and intensity, and we actually think it'll be a nice addition to the neighborhood. So I want to leave a few minutes so that Matthias can tell us about the modern logistics.
Matthias, for the record, once again, when people hear warehousing, they don't think of the most sexy use. But when we look at modern logistics facilities, and that's a real term in today's industrial environment, what we see is we see a lot less of people storing boxes in warehouses and just storing things to send out. The modern logistics industry is far more complex and jobs driven than it was even 3 to 5 years ago. Warehouses can employ, and more than likely not this one, this is spec development, but Amazon's warehouses employ thousands of people. They employ technologies that are unfathomable to those who've never been in a warehouse. We're talking triple level mezzanine, automated pick modules, storage. It's in no way manufacturing. But when we look at the modern logistics facility, it's not your grandfather's warehouse anymore. Goods are sent rapidly with the touches of people, with error rates that are so low, it's astounding. And I mentioned earlier that we have about 5 million square feet in this town. If any member of the commission, I don't know if this is an appropriate offer, but if any member of the commission wants to go and see a modern logistics facility for themselves, I would absolutely welcome it, because I've been doing this in the industrial field now for 15 years, and I'm unbelievably passionate about what we do with the lodges. And our enablement of our customers to get people their goods, in some cases hours, but more often than not days, is a huge driver, not for just the US economy, but a huge driver for the Reno economy. So kind of higher level market information for the commission. Reno has about the greater Reno market, that's including Story County, Sparks, has about 96 million square feet of logistics facilities. That amount of logistics facility per capita is one of the highest in the nation. This is a strategic location for logistics. Our customers serve 18% of the US population in a 2-day truck drive. So somebody who was in this market back in 2010, 2008, when demand was terrible, people were losing their jobs because we were concentrated in one industry that wasn't really a sustainable one in the housing sector. As we look at logistics in the long run, most markets cannot duplicate our locational advantage to serve that amount of people. And so when we start talking about these warehouse projects, not just Prologis, but some of my friendly competitors, it's a way, in my view, a path forward for us to really diversify our economy and capitalize on our regional location. So as Seattle and Denver and Phoenix and all of the in-between and San Diego, as consumption there goes up, our industrial demand goes up, which drives property taxes that we pay. The amount of labor. Like the folks that are in these warehouses, they're not making $300,000, or they're not doctors. So they're not huge high-paying jobs, but they're good jobs. The average wage at this point in the warehouse is in excess of $15 an hour. That's a good wage, almost double minimum wage. So to that end, I would implore the commission, in these warehousing projects, to really dig deep and look at how modern logistics really works. And again, the offer is completely on the table. I would love to walk you through some of our more modern facilities, just so you can get an idea of how goods move from point A to point B. Thank you.
I should just say we agree with all the conditions, so we're available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Presentation from staff. Kyle, good evening.
Thank you, Chair, Commission, Kyle Chisholm, Assistant Planner for the record. Wait for my presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did forget. I think Nathan might have been a little sharper than you tonight, but Kyle, you're bringing it.
Yeah, he looked good.
You look good too. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, red cheeks. Let's see. So, Stage Point 8. So what you have before you tonight is a special use permit. Similar to the last project, this is for residential adjacency. It's a 12.49 acre site, or roughly 12.5 acres, single parcel. They are proposing roughly 242,000 square foot industrial flex building. It's zoned IC, industrial master plan designation, similar to the last project. I did a little ortho of the kind of existing site area, just to kind of put it in perspective. So the site is located north east of the Military Echo Avenue intersection. You can see just to the southeast is the Makita site, currently under review. The Navy training facility is directly to the north of the property. Then you have two vacant industrial zone properties to the east and west. And the residential property zoned MF30 is directly southwest of the site. I do want to point out that there is maps under review right now for residential development. So although currently undeveloped, it could be somewhat considered an existing development. It's an approved development. It's under review at the final map stage right now, so we can expect to see homes in that location soon. So I do want to point that out. That being said, the homes that are located in this subdivision are proposed to be oriented away from the subject site. So here's a zoning perspective of what I just kind of went over. Here's a site plan, so you see, I'll use the mouse, Military Road up here, and then Mount Limbo Street, which is actually, sorry for the orientations, that's the way I could fit it, but that's actually to the east of the site. The building, the residential property, which is what we're looking at here tonight, is located right here. Well, roughly right there. And as you can see, the site is oriented north-south, with the front entrance and parking area being to the employee parking area or customer parking area being located to the south. The truck trains are located east. The designer did a good job buffering these truck parking areas and the truck bays away from the residential properties. I mentioned in the staff report that the lighting that's proposed is all dark skies type. So that's why you don't see a condition that we would normally see with these types of projects in North Valleys, is because they've proposed it that way. They have dark skies lighting, and there's, I believe 5 poles that are roughly around 20 feet, and they're all on the east side of the site. You will not be able to see them with the way the building is designed. With that, I also want to point out that there was a noise study that was provided in the staff report that showed truck activities and general site operations, took into consideration the existing roadway noise levels in the existing area over 24-hour periods. And the noise study did demonstrate that the code requirements that are required for residential adjacency will not be exceeded. So, however, staff did feel that it was appropriate still limiting the truck circulation on site, and so that's why there is a condition, because the noise study didn't really take out into consideration lighting, headlight glare, stuff like that. And so staff, similar to other projects in the area, recommended a condition that limits on-site movement of vehicles and truck traffic. Operations, obviously, within the industrial commercial zone is for warehouse use or distribution use is allowed 24 hours. So they would be allowed 24 hours by right. They are allowed 24 hours by right for this use. However, the outdoor kind of component would be limited to 10 p.m. So with the conditions as proposed. Landscape plan, as you can see here, this is actually to the east, but the applicant has proposed, similar to the last project you saw, a double row evergreen trees and shrub along both the Mount Limbo frontage and the frontage to the south that's facing the residential rezoned properties. Staff felt that that was adequate screening, not only the foliage screening, but this building, as the applicant has mentioned, is set back 200 feet from the residential property, so there is a substantial buffer there between this building and the property to the south. And as the applicant mentioned, that the residential property is, I think she said 20 feet overlap, so it's, but nevertheless, it is adjacent, so we analyzed it as such. Staff, this was presented to the board for NAB, and on August 15th, staff received one comment from a NAB member with general concerns related to overall traffic, especially impacts to 395 and sewer capacity. Also received one public comment or email, in opposition of the project in regards to sewer capacity and drainage. So staff was able to make all the applicable findings, and with the conditions as proposed in the staff report, we'll recommend that the Planning Commission approve the project. Are there any questions yet?
Thank you, Kyle. Before I open up for public comment, I'll ask commissioners for disclosure. We'll start with Commissioner Gower.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have visited the site previously, received and written email.
Mr. Hawkins, as did I.
Commissioner Johnson, as did I.
Commissioner Taylor, as did I.
Commissioner Marshall, no disclosures. Commissioner Olivas, received email.
I have one request to speak form on this item from Lori Beach.
Lori Beach for the record, and I do want to actually go on the record and say thank you for my clarification of retention versus detention and the holding of that. It's always good to learn something, so now I can go to bed knowing I learned something today. While I cannot say I totally oppose this project, I do want to say one of the positive things, this area will no longer become if this is approved, it will no longer be a vehicle dumping ground, so there's a positive, because that is a big irritant for that lot, as I'm sure many of you know. I would also hope that, as I requested with the other, that when applicable and when they can, that any water within their retention pond be used for their on-site irrigation to cut down on the water use of our limited resources in the high desert. And I would also like to say, I'd rather have a warehouse than 500 homes, but that's just me personally. I have many of my fellow residents disagree with me on that, and I disagree with them. I would hope that this, if approved, that they would also look at a veteran employment program along with their rideshare program, as there's a whole lot of veterans that live within the North Valleys area, especially with the Army National Guard out there and the Navy National Guard out there. And logistics is a sexy science, I will say. Thank you very much.
That's the biggest smile I've seen in my class all night. Do we have any additional requests to speak forms on this item?
I don't have any other forms.
Anyone else wishing to make public comment on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back to the commission for questions. Let's get it started. Commissioner Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question will be for the applicant. Just north across the street from where the proposed warehouse is going, you've got the United States Navy and a small catch of Marine Corps. Typically, they don't like something what's going to be built next to them like that with a little bit of space. Have you contacted the CO of this unit for his blessing?
I have not personally. I'll ask Mr. Douglas for the contact.
Matthias, for the record. So the short answer to your question is no. But I want to bring that up because actually this facility directly to the north is owned by the University of Nevada, Reno, and under lease with the Naval Reserve. It's my understanding that that actually building is going to come to market for sale over the next year, and that lease is actually going to expire, at which point the Navy is planning on moving out. I don't know how much of that I'm supposed to say in public, but I said it all right then. But, so we have not contacted them, but their occupancy of that facility, I think, is very limited from what I've heard in the market.
Thank you, Kyle.
Yeah, if I could just add on to that, the property is adjacent to the site, so the property owner, the university or the state board of regents was noticed for this project.
Okay, thank you. Kyle. Curb and gutter, when we're putting this new warehouse in, where's it gonna go? I mean, is it gonna encompass the whole parcel?
Are you talking about the street, the curb and gutter on the street, or just throughout the site?
And adjacent to the warehouse.
Let's see. Let me go back. Let's go back. So I think this will probably provide a better picture. So the sidewalks will be located along Echo Avenue and Mount Limbo Street, as well as a curb and gutter system along the street here. Is that generally what you're asking?
Yes, thank you. And last but not least, sewer rules, the serve letter.
Commissioner Hawkins, can you lean into my
I'm sorry.
mic? We need that
Yeah,
tonight.
I'm sorry. Yeah, the sewer will serve letter. Talk to me about capacity.
Well, the project there was a recommended condition of approval that requires that the applicant obtain a sewer will serve before they're issued a permit.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Commissioner Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kyle, I have a question about the trees. In the last application that came before us, there was a condition for the trees. That was condition number 5. And I know you talked about trees. Does there not need to be a condition in this one?
That's a great question. So there's effectively 3 screening methods that you can do per code. One being a wall, or screen wall, 2 being landscaping, and 3 being a berm. And so the applicant specifically did not want, they're having grading challenges on this, on this east side of the site, over along the truck parking area. It would have really restricted them to do the berm. Obviously, along the front on the street, staff did not feel a wall was appropriate. And so we came into agreement to do a double row evergreen trees and shrubs that, to me, is the most effective and most aesthetic screening method. And so staff felt comfortable with that. As proposed, condition number 1, if they were to modify that, condition number 1 requires that they build it in substantial compliance with the plans. And if the commission wants to ensure that the trees get planted like this, I would put it on the record.
Okay, thank you. And then, will there be, or was there disclosures or a condition on the residential neighborhood to the potential residents about the industrial? About this going on the last one, they said that one of the conditions for the approval for the subdivision or to go ahead, there was going to be some disclosures.
I did look at the conditions of approval for the project, however, I didn't notice that, but I can't say, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't say that it's not there. But so I don't know, I don't have that information with me.
And then one clarification, I think it's for Heather.
Carrie.
I'm sorry. I'm as bad as him.
That's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. The reason why this triggered an SUP is because there's 20 feet or 12 feet that overlaps.
Yeah, this corner to the property line for the multifamily over here, this is about 20 lineal feet. And that's where the overlap is.
Thank you.
Commissioner Marshall? Oh. Additional questions? Kyle, I have two for you.
Actually, I'm not sure this is a question, but I'll pose it anyway. I did notice on this one that rather than a specific condition for nighttime pours, it was noted under the hours of construction that if they varied them, they should be submitted and approved to the satisfaction of the administrator. What was the reason for doing it that way rather than conditioning it like we did on the previous project?
Thank you for the quick question, Commissioner. So it's essentially to allow a little bit more flexibility with projects within the city. As we've seen, the nighttime pour, it's really to really get a specific plan on exactly how they're going to do that and then condition it that way. Staff and the administrator didn't feel that that was appropriate because it just really doesn't allow them any flexibility for, and so what we really wanted to do is, and maybe Angela can chime in if I'm wrong, but is really to allow that flexibility so that they can provide a plan and we can really work with them to see what's best for the area, and the administrator can require them to notice the neighborhood if need be, but that plan would be subject to the discretion of the administrator.
Angela Foos for the record. Let me also expand on that. On the previous project, it was about twice the size in terms of floor area, so there was a lot more pours, I would say, involved, and we also had the residential adjacency was much greater. Here we have a tiny corner of residential adjacency, where the previous project had an entire side with residential adjacency. So it was reviewed a little differently. The previous project also had some very specific pour requirements. Only 2 days a week, only Tuesdays through Fridays. Not sure why we don't do pours on Mondays. And also that was extended for 36 weeks. So when I think about the impacts of pouring 2 days a week for up to 36 weeks, that potentially has a greater impact than if we were to work with the contractor at the time of actual construction. Again, it will depend on what time of year, what the temperatures are. So there's a lot of nuances to this that I didn't want to make the pours worse than they had to be or more time intensive than they had to be. Let's just work with the contractor when we get to that point. And so we put a condition on here that if they do want to do night pours, they'd have to come back and work with us, and then we can find a specific requirement that fit the project at that time.
And then the second question, it looks like Mike left, so Kyle, you're basically handling this one. The southwest corner, if I understand it right, the driveway exit basically lines up with Military Road.
That's correct.
And I'm wondering if there is a concern traffic-wise for that, because I know Military has a stop there. I can't remember if, was that Echo has a stop going east-west. I'm wondering if there's any concern traffic-wise with that entrance being located directly in line with Military Road as opposed to forcing a turn. I know it's not a circulation issue for the large trucks, because the large trucks all have to enter on the east. So I just wanted to know if that's been looked at from a traffic standpoint to see if there's some concerns with that layout.
I am trying to look at the plan to see if there is a stop sign coming out of the site. But I do know that the alignment of the driveway with the intersection is preferred. Our engineering staff specifically wants that.
Okay.
They don't want it offset because that creates more, not circulation, what's the word I'm looking for, more traffic pattern problems.
Okay.
That's probably the best way I can put it.
So was there, so along that lines then, I'm assuming there's a stop sign coming out of the parcel. That's not a concern to me.
Yeah, I'm assuming there is too. I can't read, sorry, can't read the fine print on this, but our engineer worked with the applicant's engineer pretty diligently on these driveways. And so I am very confident that they have worked through that issue. But yeah, that's about the best I can answer that.
Thank you. Commissioners, additional questions? Commissioner Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one's for the applicant. On the east side of the development, years ago, there was a monitoring well, or several monitoring wells. And I'm just kind of curious what you're going to get into when you start digging there.
The geotechnical report didn't reveal anything that we would find as a surprise from their test borings, so I am not aware of the wells across the street. I'm certain that anything that would be encountered during the time would have geotechnical intervention should we encounter anything that would be something that needed mitigated. But again, the preliminary phase 1 geotechnical analysis did not uncover anything that would be of concern at this time. Did you want to? Yes.
But thanks, for the record. When we acquired the site, we did extensive phase 2 testing to look at everything. We acknowledged that the site at one point was a fire academy for the university, and I think at one point for the Army. So we're well aware, and we have an entire environmental team that has reviewed this site. But to your point, when you start digging things out, you might find something. And, you know, sort of to Commissioner Gowder's point, you know, one of the things at Prologis, the way I feel like we do that's a little bit different than a lot of our competition is we care about sustainability, the environment. We're not going to dig something up and just ignore it. That's just not who we are. So hopefully that kind of answers your questions. One, we did a pretty exhaustive test before we acquired this, and two, when and if we do find something, we're going to take care of it appropriately. Not only because it's the right thing to do and our shareholders want us to, but it's in our DNA. So that's hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions or discussion? Mr. Gower?
Mr. Chairman, just for discussion, I'm ready to make a motion on this, but for the points that Commissioner Taylor brought up and Planning Manager Foos brought up regarding the kind of the level of review relative to residential adjacency, I think we're looking at a different situation here with this one versus the last one. And I'm quite a bit more comfortable with that component of it. I'm certainly not any closer to a level of comfort or understanding of the dynamics of the hydrology component, as I don't think any of us are out there to get to that desire to have a 100% answer. But for the rest of it, specific to what we're looking at for this SUP, I can certainly make the findings relative to residential adjacency based on the conditions and the information presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Additional comments? So I'll weigh in since I was the one that had the issue with the industrial commercial last time. Had the issue with the industrial commercial across the street. But I think to Commissioner Gower's point, we are looking at a slightly different situation here. We're looking at building this about a quarter of the size of the last one. We're looking at a project that is not a transition. This is basically at the end of the industrial area. It's got industrial on 3 sides and it only barely touches the multifamily. The scale is, it's still a little bit of a concern. I still, go with what I stated about what industrial commercial meant to be as a mix. But this is stated at 39 feet. I'm not seeing anything about the desire to go higher than that. I would go on the record that if that comes back as a minor deviation, I would lose all support for it because again, it's an industrial commercial and we've set the height lower for a reason. still struggle a little bit with the scale, mainly because of what we're intending to do with that particular zoning. But this location is not a transitional step down like the last one was, and it doesn't have the same level of interface with the residential property across the street. So I'm not struggling as much with finding E as I did on the last one. My comment. Any additional comments or motion? Mr. Hawkins?
I'll take this stab at the motion. In the case of LVC 20-00007, Sage Point 8, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit, subject to the conditions listed in the staff report, and I can make all the findings.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. That motion?
Commissioner Gower will second. I can make the findings as well.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Just going to throw out there that, again, my approval of this based on finding E is the building is not going to be looking for a deviation on the height. It's the only reason I'm able to make that finding. So with that, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Good luck with your project. Okay. Moving on our agenda, item number 8, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Mr. Gower, you want to take this one, or you want Mr. Taylor to take it? I didn't have to let you.
It's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll take a go at it. We have 3 meetings scheduled as part of the regional plan adoption process, as Jeremy Smith presented to us at the last meeting. We have 3 meetings, 1 in each jurisdiction, Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, on the 25th, 26th, and 27th of September to receive public testimony on the regional plan update, updated regional plan, and make a decision or recommendation to the Regional Planning Governing Board to move that document forward. And I think, as Jeremy indicated, October 11th is the Regional Planning Governing Board date that they're going to look at adoption if the commission makes a recommendation. So it's that close after a 3-year update process.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Item 9, staff announcements.
Thank you. Again, for the record, Angela, who's planning manager. Just to give you an update on council actions since our last meeting. You had three items that were heard by city council that were second readings that were all approved. One was the digital sign ordinance that's now in effect. Another one was the Vassar zone change that was approved for the second reading. And then also the code updates. There was a handful of code updates that came forth through the housing task force. Those have been approved and are in effect. Commissioner Griffith is no longer on the planning commission. On Monday, the council will vote on her replacement. So at our next planning commission hearing, we'll have her replacement. And then in terms of upcoming trainings, I did want to acknowledge to everyone that our state planning conference is coming up next month. It's going to be October 14th through 16th. And if any of the commissioners are interested in attending, we do have budget to send you. So definitely let us know if you are interested and we can help facilitate that.
Can I ask a quick question on that? Is there a final agenda on the I don't find to see a draft, kind of like a partial draft on the net. Is there a final agenda?
It's changing by the day. It's a full calendar, but some of the sessions are moving around just based on session speakers. But the one that it's the same schedule. Essentially, a couple sessions are moving though.
Could you send that out, or just with the understanding that times may change?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 10, Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. Commissioner Marshall.
I wanted to, I was just reading the NAB Ward 2 agenda the other day, and it had on it a review review and comment, not, obviously the NATs don't take action, but an annexation. And I know that when we went through the code process, we asked, or we proposed that the planning commission issue a recommendation to an official recommendation on annexations and de-annexations. And they said, no, we don't want to do that. But I think, and I don't know whether or not this is something we can just do on our own, or we have to ask the city council permission to do the same thing as NAMs do. Bring an annexation before us, and we can, we're the planning commission, and they can take our input or not take our input, but just for comment like they do for NAMs. I would think that would be maybe an appropriate compromise between that. I think if the NABs can do it, then I think the planning commission probably has just as much good things or good analysis of the proposal. So I don't know if we need to have an agenda item or how to address that. The only other, I know this is maybe more on a comment, but every time I drive by down Plum, what's going to be a new dealership, Plum and Kitsky, near Costco, yeah, whatever that is, and seeing the new landscaping that's going in, it's like right on.
I think we approved that project, so you can pat yourself on the back for that. There you go. Commissioners, additional discussion, or additional requests for future agenda items? Okay. Item 11, public comment. For either public comment in the action item or for any general public comment. Callie, any request to speak forms?
I do not have any forms submitted.
Tim, do you want to make a statement? It's public comment. You got 3 minutes.
I would just like to say...
Come on, go ahead and come on up. We'll make it official. You've been here all night. You're entitled.
On my behalf, I apologize to the commission for my passionate comments at certain points. I'm not here to upset your meeting, but I'm very passionate about that development and the developments that concern the valley. And like I said before, the responsibility of a lot of things going on. You guys got a hell of a job, and it's tough. I understand that. But we need to look at things. Mr. Commissioner Gower, thank you for that presentation, and Marshall for the good comments on your presentation, and that if we can follow those kind of procedures and get the proper information to you, we as the people that are sitting out here listening, sometimes we see and watch and whatever, and we don't believe you're getting the proper information from each of the staff reports, because you have to ask so many questions. Did they do this? Did it happen? And that's what's missed. That's what's being missed, is the things that are not reported to you that should be. The picture of the floodplain and the holding tank, the holding pond for that one project. It's right up against the floodplain. And it does, the hydrologist that did the report at the city meetings and that, every drop of water that falls in that North Valley's basin ends up in Swan Lake. It ends up in Swan Lake. And they would not let us dredge, or they would not let us go below that level to go and let any water drain into the lake. And all of these detention ponds are kind of a joke in a way, in that we really, truly need a good storm drain system. Anyway, thank you for allowing me to speak and to bring some of these points to you that I think sometimes are missed and not fully explained to you. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Tim, you as well. I'm going to say there's no other public comment tonight, so with that, I'll move on to item 12, looking for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Good night.
Good night.